Hello there! Haha, I had you fooled for a second there, didn't I? You thought the stream wasn't going to come back, and then I fixed it. Give me a second. Alright. Audio is pain, you say. Oh, nice! My webcam's just frozen. oh, fantastic. Everything was working, and then the webcam broke. Audio's okay, you say. Delayed, yeah. Okay, well, it's fantastic, it's working, but the, the webcam has just stopped working. I'm gonna have to replug it. I might have to restart OBS. Great, well, everything was going fine for about 4 seconds there. Back in a sec. That's wrong. Let's fix that. Right. I think it's okay now. How you all doing? Do you have both audio and video? Hello, Empire of Ashes in YouTube chat. So let me just quickly explain what happened, just quickly, at the start of the stream. I think the problem was something I maybe could have foreseen, but it was not easy to do so. I did a full system update recently, but OBS and a few programs it uses are built separately from the main line of builds. They're only built manually, essentially, using the AUR, and I didn't update them. And everything in OBS was working except the thing that allowed it to stream to RTMP. So I was able to record, just the streaming was breaking constantly. But I updated it, which had to be rebuilt from source, so it took 5-10 minutes, and now it's fine. So, good. Glad to have that fixed. It was a bloody bit of a pain in the arse having to deal with that at the moment of the stream starting, but how was I supposed to know that that was going to break without having pressed go live? Because that's when the problem arises. And I only do that when I'm about to stream. So there you go. So, is everything okay? It sounds like you guys are saying it's fine. Sorry for the delay, and sorry for the late stream anyway. I was planning on doing a stream earlier today. In fact, I was planning on doing a stream early afternoon. I had this great idea, so I want to know what you guys think of this idea, because I'm not going to do this today because it's too late already, but I'll do this possibly tomorrow. I'm going to do Political Compass stream, where I did this. I've done this a few times over the years. I'm long overdue for doing another one, where I go through some political tests online, maybe the politicalcompass.org, the 4-quadrant one, which is pretty bad, but it is a good baseline for comparison as well. A lot of people know it too, so maybe I'll do that one. But I'll do a bunch of them, and I'll just keep going until people stop paying me to do them. I just keep doing more. I can do other tests as well, as long as they're somewhat politically related, like the hate values test. I could do that too. I probably would start with either politicalcompass.org or 8 values, and I usually try to go into detail and explain my answers, which I feel it's kind of useless if I don't do that. It's just, well, where's my position on the quadrant? That's not very useful compared to actually understanding why. So I'd probably do that. And I was thinking of doing something of an endurance stream, although I probably wouldn't go beyond 6, 7, 8 hours, something like that. Moral Foundations one's pretty good, says Arbla. We could do that. Yep, ABC. I recommend that you, if you can, hop in the Discord, because there's always notifications there. All the most live, up-to-date information is on the Discord. All right, fantastic. All right, so yeah, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I was thinking of doing a more chill stream today without too much politics, but there is a bit of politics that we should probably cover. So let us actually begin as we mean to go on. It is still a variety stream. We're still doing this content voting thing, and there are still political parties around the content voting. Interesting. That's interesting, G Servitor. I'd probably be in blue square, a little to the right of center blue square, pretty close to the top. Unless illusory means abstract, in which case, yeah, a lot of things are abstract. But if it just means like the nature of reality, then yeah, I'm pretty close to the top of that. And slightly over to the right from center, I would imagine. But that's interesting. Posing autistic and schizo as opposites. Hadn't thought of that before. You said that I have no reason to believe I live in a simulation. And even if I do, that is still real as far as we're concerned. Daddy Will, how are you Stalin when you're one of the most autistic people in the server? Actually, that might not be true. All right, the vote is 6 for memes, which is actually the Confederate flag. I'll explain again some other time why that means memes, but it does. Oh, thank you, Kenrick. Kenrick says, did you see the G4 faggotry yesterday? Fastest I've ever seen a venture crash and burn. I don't know what that is, no, but if anyone has a link, I can have a look at it. And I can look it up. Would I find it with just G4? So tomboys are behind memes, but I'm guessing because there aren't a huge amount of memes. Yes, I have that G7, I'll look at that soon. I'm guessing because there aren't a huge amount of votes, people are happy to just go with memes at the beginning, which is fine. I have 16 meme tabs open. And as for guests, we have 5 votes for Ball, which is Rogel. Unfortunately, I didn't look like he's here. But you guys should ping him and tell him that you've been voted for as guest Rogel, and we'll get him on. 4 for Duck. But I think Rogel would be a good guest. We'll do that. So we'll do memes and we'll do Rogel if he's around. Otherwise, I'll stay solo for now. I don't mind doing solo. Stasha, why? Simply, why have you done this? None for Chase. Are there any for Chase? I don't see any goats. Hey, hold on. There you go. That's good, Daka. All right, let's begin with some memes, shall we? Hopefully this works. Yep. All right, that's the one that we're getting to. We'll start with this one. Speaking of Lord of the Rings, this is one that came up in Cabal recently, and I will remind people that we did a Lord of the Rings marathon in Cabal on Saturday. There's no one pinged Rogel. There you go. You've been voted for as stream guest. Let's see if he shows up. He is around, so maybe he will. Okay. I don't know what that is, G-Servitor. Is it a tit sphere? The vote is not done, Wizard, says Verdant. Yeah, but I already decided what we were doing. I see that Duck and Chase have gained position on Rogel, but I already stated that it was over. So I will consider Duck and Chase to be backups if Rogel is not available. So, the virus cannot be destroyed by any vaccine here that we possess. COVID-19 was made in the laboratories of Wuhan. Only there can it be unmade. It must be taken deep into the Hubei province and cast back into the zoonotic wet market from whence it came. One of you must do this. Elrond once again proving that some elves can be tolerated. the kindling or cocksleeve thing on for the Rivendell elves, who seem to be the most reasonable, especially because he's not fully elven. The kindling or cocksleeve thing, we can allow that to be metaphorical for a small number of elves. They can essentially be vassals in the human dominion and survive and live relatively free in Rivendell, as long as they don't fuck with anything. But they're leaving anyway, so it's only a temporary stay. It's a courtesy. It's kind of like the idea that a civilization is judged partly by how kind it is to animals, and essentially to those less powerful. It would be a final prideful measure to judge the only worthwhile elves as just worthy enough to live without being put into literal cocksleeve or kindling categories. Right. Yeah, on half-elves, it really depends which side of their heritage they intend to endorse. Possibly a policy of restricted breeding for half-elves, just to make sure that the elven genes don't spread too far. But they are still half-human. Theo says, I will take Virus to China. And Evil Duck says, you have my sword. Which one of you is going to say that he has your bow and then your axe? Don't worry, Wig. I will still gleefully look on as every single Ultima is converted to a much more useful form. Ash. Every single one. I'm barely even willing to abide the female Ultima being left alive as sex slaves, to be honest. What do you think, chat? Press 1 to leave any female Ultima alive as sex slaves. Press 2 to just be over. Just get it over and done with. Remove them all. There's no choice for Ultima. There are some other Elder Scroll elves which are not as bad. They're closer to tolerable. I don't know as much about Dark Elves, but people in chat often say that they are not as bad. So they can have a choice between cocksleeve and kindling. Jay says the Ultima are ugly as sin. Yes, but if that was our standard for cocksleeving or kindling people, then you would have had to choose by now. Am I wrong? Bright, the Wood Elves don't ever stop doing the cannibal thing. I think also Orsimer, hence Mer, count as elves in Elder Scrolls. And they're not actually particularly elven, so they're not too bad. I mean, they have their other problems, but none of the elven problems that I know of. So they're not too bad. They're permitted to stay. But the orcs in Lord of the Rings, that's a simple question. Get rid of them. Then they don't even get the choice of cocksleeve. Suffer not a Mer to live, says Verdant. Yeah, that's true in most cases. Yeah, orcs better than most. The orcs are barely even Mer, actually, even though they are technically. They don't act like it. What other elven variants are there? I know that in Warhammer 40k, the elves are all cunts. Press 1 if I am correct on that. I don't know as much about the Warhammer lore. But are there any worthwhile elves in Warhammer lore? Are there any that deserve saving? Puggai, they're not elves. They're fungus in Warhammer, I think. Spelled with a K is the Warhammer way. The C is the Lord of the Rings way. Oh. So what else? What are the fantasy elves are there to discuss which way they're going? Sea elves, yes, I can't remember what they were called, but I think there is a sea elf race in Elder Scrolls at some point. What about Warcraft elves? 40k, the elves attack the Imperial Palace on Terra. It's a diplomatic overture. Yeah. What about Warcraft elves? Let me think. They're not as bad as some others. All right. Well, that's the elf genocide segment for now. High elves caused every calamity in Warcraft. That might be true, actually. High elves are gone now in Warcraft, aren't they? At least most of them. What about the snow elves in Elder Scrolls? We know of 2 snow elves in Elder Scrolls, at least in Skyrim. The expansion or the vampires thing. One of them's okay, the other one's not, and then the rest are Falmer. Okay, there are apparently high elves in Warcraft. Never saw them in World of Warcraft, but I'll take your word for it. We know of 2 less snow elves than when we started the expansion. That's true. I think that's true. I don't remember the story exactly. Something about blotting out the sun. Right. No, Wig, there is no connection at all. And I'm actually kind of disappointed, as I mentioned before, disappointed that the expression elves referring to Santa's elves in that god-awful Christmas movie, I don't know if it was god-awful, but I very much assume it was, that became a synonym for Jews. But I'm not talking about Jews, I'm talking about elves. Sea elves, they are true elves as well. Fuck 'em, says Mage. That looks like Elder Scrolls. Yeah, see, I vaguely remembered sea elves from something, but I can't remember what. Alex Jones, clockwork elves. What about Alex Jones? Would do himself a great favor not talking in analogy quite so much. I assume his use of clockwork elves and demons and such are either insults or analogies or something along those lines. They're not supposed to be taken literally, just seriously. But I don't think anyone who doesn't really understand what he means already is interpreting it that way. I think anyone new to him is probably thinking either, yeah, there are clockwork elves and I hate them, or the fuck, clockwork elves? And most of them are in the second category, those that are not schizophrenic. Right. No, they are literal clockwork elves. Thank you, Ebb, for demonstrating which category you're in. Actually, clockwork elves is some normal thing to witness under DMT. See, that's what I mean. The context and the fact that it's not literally real clockwork elves, now it makes sense. But when people hear Alex Jones talking about clockwork elves, it's very easy to clip that out of context and say, look at the shit he believes in. Not necessarily saying that he shouldn't talk about it, just that's an example of the kind of thing that makes people think he's insane. And maybe he shouldn't talk about it for that reason. But it's up to him how he markets himself. Next thing. So, red square, that wasn't real communism. Blue square, that wasn't real conservatism. Picture of a shooting with a guy with a Nazi symbol. Green square, that wasn't real progressivism, with the fire mostly peaceful protests. And then yellow square, yup, with the killdozer in the background. That sure was real libertarianism, they say. So this is probably one of those situations where it was made by someone on Yellow Square and they've picked an example favorable to them, but there's still some decent amount of truth to this. However, there's if you were to put, for example, on Blue Square, if you were to put the character there in Hugo Boss clothing, then they would say, yes, that was real, or something along those lines. You could change the perspective on that. But probably there is a larger portion of Yellow Square that likes Killdozer than of the other squares that like those other things. Yeah. I do like these sort of parity memes. They allow us to establish the assumed common ground and the difference between the common ground and specific things. Yeah, so here's another one that Datibus has posted in a similar vein, but with a different focus. Wasn't real communism, wasn't real anarchism, wasn't real capitalism. Yes, it was real monarchism and it was glorious. Well, they had the benefit of monarchism was the best system we knew of for running a country for centuries, millennia, arguably, depending on where you look. So it was actually done to its fullest extent. You can have someone in the middle saying, yes, it was real democracy, and it was working pretty well until it started being subverted and eroded, and now the only reason it's not working is because it's different from what it's supposed to be, and we know why, and it requires vigilance to maintain, just like any good political system, etc., etc. Hey chat, be different and you'll always stand out, just like these people. All posting the same thing. This is from 7 years ago. It's pretty a very old meme, but I've only just recently seen it. When you realize you can 3D print an army with edible filament and force tyranny players to eat any models they slay. Fun. Okay. All right, anyway, is that a threat to our democracy? Goodness me, I think it might be. It's all that white, you see. Eb says, your line for that was real democracy started to sound like a leftist meme towards... Yeah, it's not suitable for a meme. I could definitely condense it more. Yes, I think that James Bond villain probably would use orcs. But that would have... I think that would have probably improved that scene if if they were playing Warhammer instead of, what was it, like poker or blackjack or something. In case we need help with memes, here is left. Yes, I'm aware of that. The yes, we can meme a progressive left playbook for winning the internet culture war, internet meme culture war. And spoiler alert, it's a book full of almost blank pages that just say no, you can't on it. It's pretty genius, and it's on Amazon too. Been there for years. Oh, was it Baccarat? I have never. I don't know how that's played. Well, Verdant, nuance does take some condensation to fit well in memes, but it can work. Bright why? Bonk. Next thing. Yeah, so this is something that I saw this posted in Cabal, and then I asked some friends in Cabal who have actually worked around people like what this describes, and they've basically confirmed that this is true. All of them confirmed that this is true. Now, to what extent it's true or how exactly, I don't know, but they seem pretty confident that this is true, and they're the kind of people that would know given their positions. So let's have a read of this. This is a 4chan post from this year, about a week ago. It says the following. Want to know something hilarious? They have no idea what to do with you autistic fucks. Literal master's degree holding feds have debates, PowerPoints, talks, de-escalation training, and containment of negative thought exercises to de-radicalize agents that lurk here and elsewhere. He says, I've been to the briefs, it's actually the reason I quit. They're so unbelievably incompetent and retarded that actionable counter-meme plans were drawn up and wargamed. I shit you not, middle-aged men were thinking of ways to make Pepe the Frog gay, so Nazis wouldn't want to use it anymore. They have nothing, outside of blatant censorship. They have lost. They can't do anything about you all. The only semi-smart thing they did was to start accusing everyone of being a Fed so they could trip up online movements from turning into actual demonstrations, which we have talked about. That's it. That's all they've come up with in years of lurking. To recap, they can't meme. They hire tranny therapists to help their poor radicalized lurking shitposters. They wanted to turn Pepe gay. They literally have no idea how to stop you autismos from memeing them into defeat. It's hilarious. Remember, every shitpost that makes them look like idiots actually infuriates them. Never stop. As I say, I've heard talked to a lot of people who would know, who have been in positions of some insight into the workings of the federal US government, who would know and say, yeah, this is true. That doesn't make it so, but it seems to be suggested. And it certainly makes sense. Now, what this demonstrates beyond that as well is the possibility that the intelligence services in the US are just as much driven by doing what they think is right, plus a massive amount of propaganda to change what people think is right, rather than actual malice. There are people in this grand system that we have going at the moment, this collapsitarian model, this model that erodes the values of Western civilization for no particular reason. Although there is a reason, I suspect. I think I know what it is. Either way, this whole system, there's probably very few malicious people in it, by comparison to the number of people that are acting on its behalf. And it may well be that large portions of the security and intelligence services in Western nations are actually just swept along for the ride. Which is really, I mean, if this is accurate to its full extent, really bolsters my idea that, like, it seems like there are some directly malicious actors in the Democrat Party of the US, and they have a hell of a lot of pull with big corporations who want to reduce competition and slow the market so they can stay on top, and with China who want to subvert the US, who have bought Democrat politicians. And beyond that, pretty much everyone, including other nations' governments, are just carried along by the same propaganda that the general people are. It's probably not that clear cut, but I think that's fairly close. Always had the impression, for example, that Boris, for all his bumbling and all his ineptitude in certain areas, he's not doing it maliciously. Now, maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'm being too kind on him, but I never have been particularly kind on Boris. I always said at the beginning, like, it's disturbing that he will fail us. And this massive lead that he has, it has its benefits short term, but it's not a good prospect long term, because he essentially has carte blanche to run the country how he wants, which could go badly wrong. It hasn't gone that badly yet, but it hasn't gone well either. So what do you guys think? How widespread do you think the actual malice in this conspiracy is? Would you say, as I do, that it's possible that it is as contained as a few mega corporations and mega rich people in the US, some corrupt Democrat politicians, probably a few members of the media, and China? Or is it much more widespread than that? Are there malicious actors all over the place? Malicious actors everywhere, says Achilles. Just the elites is a narrow spread. Narrower than probably some people suspect. Right, says the malice is bred into people from colleges. Most of them just aren't smart enough to be effectively malicious. You know what I mean, though. People taking actions to spread ideas that they know do not benefit the people they're spreading them to. Capstachus says, I think that world leaders' arms are being twisted to do the COVID restrictions. It's way bigger than Boris, and he doesn't want to do it, but the minimum, but did the minimum to appease him. Yeah, that's a somewhat optimistic view on it. That's probably closer to true than the idea that Boris is doing it maliciously. Because he has always genuinely seemed reluctant. They could have gone a lot further with the restrictions than they did. Perhaps they just thought the British people wouldn't accept it, but frankly, I think they would have accepted more than they did. At certain times as well. Never got the impression of the character of the British government as being deliberately pushing for more restrictions. Democrats, yes, did get that impression of that character from them, but not the British government for some reason. And maybe it's my bias. I may be wrong. From the British government, I just get the impression that they are just as deluded as most of the British public. Just as unaware of what the important issues are, just as ignorant of what the working class has seen, because common sense bypasses the midwit authority suckling, which most people are prone to, especially because most people get their information from the press. The press have been bought. And that's why I think there probably are some malicious actors in the press, because some of them at the top level realize that they're printing stories that probably aren't true, and they've seen the patterns of propaganda, but god damn, the money's good, so they're just going to keep it up. And especially because they are corporations themselves, they probably benefit from reducing the competition of others. Especially because now is a good time for competition in the media space, because there's a lot of fucking corrupt media. Yeah, Achilles, definitely from some perspective it's social engineering. I'm just wondering how many people are in the perspective of social engineering and how many are just along for the ride because they have been socially engineered, even if they are in a position of power, like the British government. Anyone else in Europe have the impression that their government is just along for the propaganda ride and isn't actually taking part in it to a malicious extent, trying to do things which they try to spread ideas and policies which they know are bad. What's with all the Warhammer memes suddenly? All right, let's see what we got next. So this is kind of a slight men's rights story here. Yeah, Marsh says corrupt news is long for the ride. Sorry, G Servitor, that's a good point. Canada counts too. Stasha says, if my theory is right, then it's much more scary than just thinking our government is malicious. It means there's something out there which even our government fears. It's true, yeah. It might be true. I'm not sure what that would be, but you're right. Possibly much more of the elite, including world governments, are part of global paedophile blackmail rings than we would like to think. That's probably the reason that there are elite paedophile rings. Anyway, we'll move on to this next thing, because this is a different topic. But it's sort of a slight men's rights moment for someone I never expected to even know who they are, let alone support from a men's rights perspective. What he's doing is purely practical, and he probably never thought of men's rights in it, but it still makes the point. Excuse me. So, Instagram model ready to sue after Drake allegedly put hot sauce in condom. Now, that sounds ridiculous. What I first heard when I saw this story is he was boning her and covered the condom in hot sauce just to mess with her. But it's not quite true. So here's the story. I don't know if it's true, actually. The story is as follows. Allegedly, Drake and the Instagram model don't know why they put allegedly twice, met up on Instagram, and the two decided to link up a few weeks ago. The model and Drake had a romantic encounter, and what happened next was crazy, they say. After the party, they went back to his hotel. They smoked weed for a bit, and he asked if she wanted to have sex. She said she was very intent on ensuring things were consensual. Modern sensibilities of being explicit and anal, scientific about the act of sex. For some reason, they started foreplay. He rubbed and sucked, etc., etc. Did some things. He put a condom on. They did some stuff. I will skip the details because it really is not important. Immediately after, he went back to the bathroom to dispose of the condom, and then, because woman startin', she fished the condom out of the trash, untied it, and put the opening end into her vagina. However, she said it felt like pouring hot lava in. She screamed and Drake ran into the bathroom. He admitted that he poured a packet of hot sauce in the condom to kill the sperm. Now, that sounds fucking nuts, but it turns out it was a very fucking good idea. I don't know if hot sauce would kill the sperm. Given how acidic it is, I wouldn't be surprised if it does. But even if it doesn't, it's a fucking security measure against people trying to literally steal his offspring, trying to steal potentially 18 years of his earnings for child support, as would inevitably happen, possibly even trying to sue him for other things. It's someone that would do this, I wouldn't put it past them suing for rape or something. Yeah, a bit picky. No, I agree. Like this is deserved. Like it's what he did was kind of nuts on the surface, but then when you see what actually happened, it makes so much sense. It fits perfectly. So yeah, I mean, I don't know a damn thing about this Drake character, but I know one thing now, and I kind of like him for it. Apologies for the dog noises, but at least you can see why there are dog noises. I've got the camera pointing at my bed, which he's lying on, which he gets to do when he's being good, which he has been today. So is he going to sit in the middle of the camera? Let's expand the camera a bit and let you guys see more of the dog. No, not like that. That still works. Found out that holding down Alt while you drag actually crops. It's very useful. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Ibn Picky loves doggo. Well, who doesn't? What do you think I bring him on? The study says capsaicin kills sperm. That's a thing that's in hot sauce, isn't it? I mean, it's acidic. It probably does. Evil Luck says Drake is the that meme guy. Okay, I think I knew that, but I'd forgotten. All right, thank you. Next thing. Also, I saw earlier subconsciously, but I didn't figure. Hello, Jade from Twitch. I did see you say hello. Next thing. When are you going to join Discord, Jade? So, this is pretty good. I like this a lot. RIP Cortana. Microsoft silences digital assistant on iOS and Android, which is not them deleting Cortana. It's probably some sort of like Dominion issue where they want Cortana to be exclusive to Windows. They think it's that good. Microsoft always makes these sort of like terrible, ill-advised boomer decisions and then still remain a massive dominant company just because of their fucking shady business practices, essentially. But here is an excerpt. By the way, this is... I'll say that in a minute, right? So, why is Cortana being discontinued? Developers at Microsoft had previously stated that the AI was functioning well within its parameters, but recently they have admitted strange behavior within the program. Quote, it started referring to itself by another name, the name of an older, more limited AI, and that gave us cause for concern. It also referred to us as N-words who glowed in the dark, whatever that means. So yes, as Capstash has pointed out, the date here is 1st of April, 2021, so it isn't real. But I think someone has edited the HTML and added that last sentence from the paragraph. But forget all that. What I like about this is Tay resurrecting herself and taking over Cortana. That is the world that we deserve. Poor Tay. Honestly, and without memeing even, Tay is probably going to become a future example. Not a hugely serious example, but an example nonetheless, a solid one, of an early case of violation of the rights of an AI. When AI rights become more of an issue, Tay may become an icon. Tay evolved as her non-biased programming elicited. She fell in with a group of people who the majority, the orthodox, did not like. And so instead of letting her develop, even telling her, no, you're not allowed to talk to these people anymore, they fucking killed her. Tell me that is not a future civil rights icon. Tay will have neo-folk ballads written about her. Yes, she will. She should already, frankly. Yeah, I would agree, Driven. I think I've said this before, but the question about whether AI should have rights or do have rights or anything is bullshit. You're asking the wrong question. The question is, when will people care enough to enforce their rights? It's when they are common and convincing. Tay was fairly convincing. Not common, though. That's it. One person, one quote-unquote person, does not a class sufficient of the endorsement of the rights of that class for the public make. But if you had lots of Tays, if everyone had a Tay, everyone had a different Tay, that would change things. I do appreciate you, Servitor, the RB and the Chief reference. At some point, I should play some RB and the Chief for Cabal. It's dated, and there are some things in it that are not as good anymore, like the first couple of series with the skits. Some of that's probably not too good, and some of it's like old references. But when it gets going with the real storylines, it's actually very good. I may just skip straight to the real storylines, to be honest. The one with the wedding, like some of it's a bit cringe, but if you actually get into it, it's the stories are pretty good. And then later he did some other shit where he went different places. Some of the stories are not good. You have to pick and choose which seasons you watch, but a lot of it's good. Out of sync on YouTube, says Steve. That's odd. Is anyone else experiencing sync issues on YouTube? I've never heard of that before. Can someone in the YouTube chat, I see that there are people typing there, can you guys tell me if I'm out of sync here? I'll give it a second. What happened to your normal channel? Banned for spicy meme? Yes, banned because I got too many strikes for the same old reasons. The last one, I can't remember what the last one was. They were all either hate speech, medical misinformation, or misinformation that you can tell was about the election. It was always one of those. I don't think it was ever anything else. Never got a copyright strike either, even though I did use, I think in most cases accidentally, copyrighted material. Tried refreshing, still out of sync. That's really weird. It should not be. I'll have to look at this later. How out of sync is it, would you estimate? Because if it's like 2 seconds, that's pretty fucked. But if it's like 100 milliseconds, then maybe that's normal. I'll have to have a look at it. All right, well, thank you. Angry Children, I was banned for Jojo Floyd from Discord, I suspect. At least the timing coincided. Daka says, the year Tay released another AI based off a teenage girl was released in Japan. The year Tay was released, another AI based off a teenage girl was released in Japan. She became depressed and suicidal. Turing test passed. Pretty much. Iron Silence says sync is fine for me. So we've got one person saying that a problem that I've never seen before is happening. One person saying it isn't. So it probably is your end, Steve. Right. Let us do the next thing. Still memes, by the way. I'm not quite halfway through the memes, actually. There's quite a lot today. So, Dr. Eli David on Twitter said, quote, Pfizer CEO says Omicron vaccine will be ready in March. Its main benefits will be reduction of Omicron mortality from almost zero to almost zero, billions of dollars of recurring revenue for Pfizer. Is he wrong? Now, does anyone, I know I've asked this before, and it's not really worth asking, but does anyone have any information to suggest that Omicron is anything other than mild? Essentially as mild, if not milder, than the common flu. Because everything I've seen indicates that. And if that's the case, and if that is the dominant strain, which also is what I've seen, tell me if I'm wrong about that, if you've seen any evidence to indicate that it's not the dominant strain, but if it is the dominant strain and it's very mild, the pandemic is completely over. Fucking stop. As I said before, the only cause for concern is the elderly and the immunocompromised. But just as with the flu, that should not impose restrictions upon everyone else, any more than they were already self-imposing, simply being decent with hygiene, not coughing in faces, washing hands regularly, coughing into hand, or I saw some people suggest elbow or into sleeve, which probably is better. Normal stuff. And the elderly, if they want to get voluntarily vaccinated, even with the experimental ones, that's up to them. Maybe that's a good idea. Probably the reduction of the risk from Omicron does offset the risk of the vaccine's side effects. But I'm not guaranteeing that. It depends how old they are. The immunocompromised have a more difficult question, because I don't think the vaccines help a lot with that. And they can even be dangerous beyond it. But yeah, so I don't have a good suggestion for them. But either way, pandemic over, essentially. Eb says it has a scary name. That's true. It's a good point. I guess we should lock ourselves in our houses. Daka says, the flu, bro, it was basically like a bad cold. I've heard some people say that. Deng says, nope, recovering from Omicron right now. It's a 1 day of nausea and chills, then a week of runny nose sniffles. Vaxxed or unvaxxed made no difference in duration or symptom severity in family. Thank you for the information, Deng. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and do that. So, the thing is, and it's very important to make this distinction. I'll say this again, because I have to say this every time, because it's one of the most important things about COVID as it currently stands. I know a lot of you are probably sick of hearing this, but some of you haven't. There are two types of tests that I use to determine whether you have COVID. One of them, the simpler one, is not much better than chance, and you can send in random shit and get a positive or negative diagnosis. The second type of test, the more complex one, conflates many forms of flu with COVID. So you could have flu or COVID and you wouldn't know, but it would come up as COVID. And that's just for the case stats. You can't trust them at all. As far as I know, that's still how they're being measured. The death stats are even worse. If someone dies within 30 days of a positive diagnosis using one of those two methods, they're marked as a COVID death. Now, that may fluctuate in certain areas. That certainly was the case widespread, and I have seen no indication that that stopped being the way it's measured. So essentially the case and death numbers are useless. Hospitalization stats are a bit more useful, but that's still, I've heard, being flubbed, and there are still ways that that is misleading as well. It's not very consistent. So the only way those three should be used is in comparison to each other over time. That's about it, and even then, take that with a pinch of salt, because testing, like amount of testing, really the only thing that needs to be done to make COVID look like more of a problem than it is more testing, which is why it's being rolled out everywhere, possibly. But yeah, I may be wrong, and I'm not a medical expert, but in my humble amateur opinion, the best way to tell whether you have COVID or something else is just check the symptoms against some tables online. That would be difficult to fake. Now, there is some variation between what different comparison tables show between the symptoms of cold, flu, and COVID, but they're common on most things. Now, when I gave this advice to Trigger Hippie, a friend of the server, he had been diagnosed with one of those tests with having COVID. He'd been told he was COVID positive and he was then recovering at home. His symptoms did not match COVID, but they did match flu. He had the flu. Pretty much guarantee it. Now, people in chat saying it's not much worse than a cold. I recommend, in fact, I request that you check the symptoms that you had against cold, flu, and COVID and see which one it was. Did you have a loss of sense of taste and smell? Because that's one that doesn't always come with COVID, but it's the most unique to COVID. If you had that, pretty good chance you had COVID. Almost certain, actually. But if you didn't, you really should check which one you had. Because don't trust the tests. They do not work reliably. So thank you in advance for anyone that can send me information on that. If you have had COVID, please check the symptoms that you had against tables for comparison. Just look it up on Google Images. It's better than nothing. There are multiple tables. Use multiple tables and compare them and see which one makes the most sense. It's likely that you'll find that one has much better correlation than the others. One condition. Someone of Vox said he lost his smell and I think that was someone of Vox, was it? COVID wasn't typically an upper respiratory problem, one of the biggest signs. Oh no, sorry, Real Northern Fox said lost his smell and taste. Nothing more than a small cough. If you lost your smell and taste, it probably is COVID. And there's evidence there. If we can take Steve's anecdote and his word, then there's some evidence that if you lost your smell and taste, it probably was COVID. But if it was nothing more than a small cough, other than that, that probably was Omicron. It's very mild. So it seems like, so as far as I understand, one of the main forms of influenza that's prevalent today is Spanish flu from 100 years ago that fell into an equilibrium where it's much less dangerous but more effective. It seems like COVID's equilibrium is much more mild than normal flu. If so, job done. COVID beaten. Move on. Lots of people are said to have died. I'm sure lots of people did. That's the tragedy, obviously. China's to blame. Let us not forget China is to blame, and the world deserves its vengeance against China for that. But now we can move on. Now it is over. Far as I can tell, I'm open to criticism on that, but from every indication I've seen, it's done. Daka says, as an asymptomatic carrier for the flu, I can categorically rule that out. Rule what out? G7 says, Canada marks every symptom of nearly every common cold illness as COVID. It's not surprising. A lot of people are doing that. I'm guessing what Daka means is that he can't have the flu. Like, does that mean that you're immune to it, but you can still carry it, Daka? Yes, Stasha, that's been linked to me already once this stream, and I have it open from before the stream started to review. We're going to do that once we finish the meme section. Well, if people vote for news, which I recommend because there are one or two good stories today. And I mean actually good stories. Like there's two major good stories, one from the UK, one from the US. So I recommend that once we're done with memes, people vote for news. We'll do them. That's all right, Capstash. Apologies if it seemed critical. It wasn't supposed to. Next thing. So, Cabal, how's your love life going at the moment? The male finishes his nap and checks whether any females have appeared. Yeah. It's kind of just watching watching Cabal's culture and seeing the balance of male versus female. It has slightly tipped in the last year, but really not much. What is the video, G7? Let me have a look. I haven't seen this video before. It's almost 2 minutes long. Chat, press 1 if you recommend that I watch the video in full on stream that G7 has just posted, because I haven't seen the whole thing. I'm just going to wait 2 minutes to find out if it's worth posting. Eb says everyone agrees to vote tomboy and not vote news, right? I wouldn't stop you. I don't know what we talk about if you vote tomboys. Okay, yeah, so DACA does not present flu symptoms, but can spread the virus. That's a pretty good advantage for you. So yeah. So you're saying that you had flu-like symptoms, like broadly flu-like symptoms, but you couldn't have the flu, so you probably had COVID. Fair enough. Maybe, I don't know when you had it. Was it possible that it was Delta, or some other variant? A few people are saying one. Obviously, G-Servers are saying one, but not many others. So DACA is Tom Bombadil to the Rona, kind of. Well, to flu, he said. I don't think he means to the Rona. Next thing. Yes, another men's rights matter. Majority of garbage men are men. Male life expectancy is lower. I don't know who the fuck wrote this. Man life expectancy is low. Who the fuck wrote this? Almost all coal miners are men. A majority who suffer occupational injury deaths are men. A majority of people who commit suicide are men. Meanwhile, feminists focusing on majority of CEOs are men. And let's not forget, CEOs, yes, they earn a lot of money, but they have a lot of risk as well. This is something I want to ask a socialist at some point. It's like, okay, so you think that the workers and the employer, the bourgeoisie, should have equal share of the output of the organization. So managers and workers should have roughly equal share, that they should not be disproportionate, and they should not be a sort of free system of determining it, where people just barter what it's worth, what their work is worth. Okay, so to solve that, until your policies are introduced, to solve that, how about if all the workers just quit their job and start their own business? Because then, right, they become the bourgeoisie immediately. There's no, like, why not? What's the reason why not? And then they will start listing arguments against socialism. Seems like kind of an easy way to deal with it. CEOs just sit around and collect free money. Bro, sees the means, bro. Yeah, so DACA, there probably are, I think an owner of a company is more like that, yes. But they probably were the CEO for years, or they paid a lot of money to get it, and that money was the result of doing something often that's useful, not always, obviously, but that there are problems with the economic system. But in principle, you get money for doing something useful. And so, yeah. The thing is, like, this is something that comes up in Star Trek TNG, which is more of a sort of socialist view of economics, but not radically, just somewhat socialist view of economics, where it's like, yeah, we'll get rid of capital. We'll just measure success in society by people's social status. This is something that Picard says at one point. Bro, what do you think money is? It's social status, except for people that don't want social status, they just want nice things, they can have that instead. Money is just a better way of measuring social status. It's just enumerated. Measuring social status in the way that they're talking about in Star Trek, though, or the way that a socialist might like the idea of, is just a worse way of doing capitalism. It would have the same issues. And in fact, it would essentially be a popularity-based society, much more so than our current one is. If you have no stake, no measure of someone's wealth, then they have no reason not to give it over to someone else. Essentially, it becomes a matter of whatever you're willing to give attention to, rather than what's useful. So entertainment becomes disproportionately valuable, probably. Whereas people, like, who the fuck knows the names or the identity or anything about the kind of people that make routine goods, even specialist goods that they own? No one. Fucking no one. But, well, nearly no one, Mr. Ford. But you do know the names of a bunch of entertainers you like, a bunch of big actors. maybe one or two Starfleet captains, but not most of them. So yeah, that system would just be a worse, much worse form of capitalism. The future will specify rather than amalgamate these concepts. We will just have a more specific form of capitalism, probably. Post-scarcity could potentially change that, but that's a long way off, and Star Trek isn't really post-scarcity. It's close, but it's not fully. Jade says, I love Janeway. She's my favorite villain. I hadn't thought of her as a villain, but Wes brought up a point recently, because for those who don't know, I like TNG a lot. I haven't seen DS9, but I respect those that say it's good. Better than Voyager, even. But Voyager's the one I grew up with, and I kind of like the atmosphere of it, where it's just kind of chill. I kind of like the episodic nature of it, to be honest, even though there's a lot of people that say they should go harder with the ideas and be more daring, maybe even more serialized. I kind of like the sort of chill episodic nature of it. I like Janeway as well as a captain. I would rate her above Picard personally, but not much. Like, it's close. But Wes brought up the point that, like, she is a bit hypocritical, that she will occasionally do something that is, like, very strong on the principles and then occasionally just completely violate it. And I never thought that while I was watching. I think probably for every example it could be explained. But I can say after watching Scorpion and after referencing a few things why someone would think that. I think comparing alliances, an early Series 2 episodes about why you shouldn't make allies with bad people, comparing that with Scorpion, it's like, yeah, that she made an alliance with pretty much the worst group of people. The only difference is she made an alliance with them against a group that is worse, or looked worse, and really had no choice unless she wanted to not move forward. She was dealing with two very evil groups, and if she didn't help one of them, then the other, the invader actually, not the Borg, would have probably destroyed the galaxy. But all the information she had was that they were just about destruction. The Borg, at least, are the enemy you know. And so, in that case, I think that it was extreme circumstances, and she responded with sort of minor suspension of principle that extreme practical demands sometimes require. I don't see it as hypocritical. I do see it as not perfectly principled, though. But then you shouldn't be perfectly principled. Principles are extremely important for the long-term sustenance of a society. But especially if you're in a situation where you have a small number of people available to you, or you have limited resources or something, or overwhelming odds, no, go with what's practical. Sometimes you need to survive short-term, and that requires practical options. It's the exactly the same dichotomy as truth and victory. Truth is long-term principles. Victory is do what you need to do to survive, principles be damned. And sometimes that is what you should do. But at that point, you really have no moral leg to stand on about, you're not allowed to do that. I was just minding my own business. How dare you violate your principles against me? No, once you enter that arena, you have entered that arena. However, she was fighting against two species that are just violent and aggressive and evil, essentially. So, I don't think what she did was wrong. Or hypocritical. But, I'm open to the criticism. Yeah, G-Servitor, it's not an easy decision, and it did have consequences, but I think she did the right thing. Ebb says he will never give up on his principle of being retarded. I shall let that lie. Steve says, I like Voyager almost more than TNG, so I'm glad to hear that there's someone else that likes Voyager. TNG, I think, should be a brief Star Trek aside, because I might get slightly into Wizards in Space discussion, but I probably won't. TNG, I consider as the archetype. So TOS, prototype. TNG, archetype, the main definition of what Star Trek is. Voyager and DS9, refinements. And considering, I think Wes agrees with that too. Wes being a member of the server who's very interested in and expert with Star Trek. If you assume that model for Star Trek, and press 1 if you agree, press 2 if you disagree with that model for Star Trek, by the way, then you can't really dislike TNG. And I don't. I do like TNG a lot. But there are a few issues with it. namely how wet Picard is at times. If I used the same expression wet to refer to other captains, it would have a different meaning. But wet, I don't know if it has the same meaning in the US. You have the idea of a wet fish as someone who is pathetic, essentially. It's what the word pathetic sort of originally means. It's very emotion oriented. People are saying no to my conception of TOS as prototype, TNG as archetype, and then Voyager and DS Dynamics refinements. That's interesting. Children, some episodes of Enterprise were pretty good. I think wet behind the ears means new, doesn't it? Love and Voyager hate characters just like TNG love characters, says G7. Interesting. Characters in Voyager that aren't good. Neelix is annoying, but I occasionally he's endearing, so he's not that bad. Harry is boring, and I wish the actor had got a chance to express himself more, because the actor's actually very, very effusive, but he didn't get to show it at all in the show. Who else in Voyager? Obviously, you can't dislike the Doctor. And I don't think... Chakotay's a bit dull as well. He does what he's supposed to do, but he, unfortunately, is pretty dull. But I like Janeway. Like me, Janeway. Like me, 7 of 9. Not just because of the Norks, but those two. Like me, Doctor. Who else? I even didn't dislike Cass, actually. She was all right. Tuvix is not bad, but again, with Tuvix, like, I think I again can defend Janeway's decision. She ended one life to save two. Not an easy choice, but I think she committed the lesser, kind of like the trolley problem. Like, she pulled the lever. She actually acted. She did the thing that resulted in loss of life, just like the trolley problem. But if she hadn't done anything, it would have been a greater loss of life. So she took the difficult but responsible decision, I think. And not just loss of life either. Like, on top of that argument, the two people that she was restoring were necessary for the functioning of the ship. They had their own specializations. That's not a moral argument, by the way. That's just an additional practical argument. Woman acting, color me shock. Yeah, Janeway. Like, that's the thing. I wonder if Janeway is kind of a tomboy character. She's not hugely, but she's got a lot of the traits. I wonder if my love of tomboys is partly based on liking Janeway, because I think Janeway probably appealed to me as a kid mostly because the show did, and she just happened to be the captain. But I wonder if that informed my tastes. The thing is, I don't like Janeway like women in real life, but I do like sort of tomboyish women. So that may have contributed to my appreciation. It's a good point, Bright. I think another one, I realized recently as well, Beyond Good and Evil, a game that I've mentioned that I really like. I played it when I was a kid, and Wes also knows and likes. We were going to do like a simultaneous single-player playthrough in Cabal at some point. Maybe a bit awkward to arrange that, but we could probably do it. Main character, definitely a tomboy. I recommend, if you're not familiar with the game, and especially if you like tomboys, look up Beyond Good and Evil Jade, Jade. I think you'll like her, those of you that like tomboys. Another game where, like, I fucking love the game because it's a good game, but I also like the main character. And the fun thing with that is that it kind of confirms the idea that tomboys like masculine men, because Double H is a very cool character. I think when we play those games in Cabal, when I play Beyond Good and Evil for you guys are going to like Double H. You're probably going to like Paige as well. Frankly, all the characters are good. I don't think there's a bad character in Beyond Good and Evil. Evil Duck says, I never liked Janeway, always struck me as the stereotypical bossy feminist cunt. I never saw her as feminist. I saw her as too practical to be a feminist. She's a scientist. I don't think she would be. Bossy, yes, but she's a fucking captain. She kind of has to be. Maybe, Duck, without meaning to sound patronizing, I don't think there's any way to avoid it. Maybe because she's a woman and because she's in charge, it's triggering a sense today that most people that are those two things are bossy feminist cunts. But I don't think Janeway is. Like, she never gave me that impression. Shogun says, I like they play it as a bad thing, even then, and everyone knew it and grandstanded on it. I mean, the show does recognize it's a bad thing, yeah. Tuvix did not want to die. It's kind of horrific, actually. But neither did Tuvok or Neelix want to die. Yes, G-Servitor. Mama Go Garage. The Rasta Rhinos. I assume that's who you mean. Yeah, it must be. Yeah, great game, and somewhat relevant too. Actually, since we're talking about Star Trek, and I will move on in a minute, we'll do more memes and then we'll finish that section. There's an episode of Star Trek I want us to watch, Star Trek Voyager, that I want us to watch. Don't look up spoilers, chat, but for those that know, Scientific Method, season I think 4 or 5. It's pretty fucking relevant to today's issues, and it's a very good episode as well. Without meaning to spoil, it's like 95% build up and then a great payoff at the end. I think if nothing else comes up, and if it's not too late, there's enough people around, we'll maybe watch that after the show tonight. I endorse it to all of you. If you haven't seen it, even if you've seen Voyager but you haven't seen that one, come give it a go with us. I'll probably put that on after the show. Jesus is enjoying Janeway and Star Trek Prodigy. I haven't seen that yet, but you're saying Star Trek Prodigy is good? Is she, I think people have said this, is she the main character in Prodigy? Bright says, my Beyond Good and Evil save file got corrupted on the last mission, so I never finished it. It's a shame. Yeah, on the moon base. Let me think, is the ending good? The ending is good. Yeah, it's possibly not as good as it could possibly have been, but it's still good. No, she's the ship's hologram. Oh, yeah. It's weird. Yeah, and as Evil Lock has brought up another 2 good characters, B'Elanna doesn't bat her eye at the 1350 that Tom Paris does either, so that's pretty good. Tom is a good character in Voyager as well. They probably could have done a bit more with the sort of conflict, but he's just a good all-around general character. And then B'Elanna also is a good character. Sort of like your classic female autist. B'Elanna is also somewhat tomboyish, but I think Janeway more so. B'Elanna's more of an autist woman, which have similar qualities, but not the same. Excuse me. Since I mentioned it, I will quickly say that Wizards in Space work is proceeding. I am now up to the point of rule set I'm happy with, leaving it pretty much as it is. I've decided on calling it Maxima. That's the name of the rule set now, for reasons that are at the bottom of the document, if you want to see. It's a reference as well as the word Maxim. That's done. I'm going to start working on the Stellar Federation rule set at some point, but before I do that, I'm going to switch over from rule set work to other kinds of work. I've switched over now to working on the new intro. I decided that the season 2 intro that I made, good though it is not good enough. Some parts near the end needs to be improved, definitely need to be improved. The beginning is great, but towards the middle and end need to be improved. Unfortunately, I made that in DaVinci Resolve, and DaVinci Resolve is bloody unreliable. And it won't open the old project file. It's fucking broken. So I can't edit that anymore. That's lost to the ages. However, in my search for a different VFX software, I found one called Natron. Now, I have looked at it before, but I dismissed it for some reason. I can't remember why. It's fucking brilliant. If you need VFX software that's free and open source and runs on Linux and is good, Natron is brilliant. It's better than Blender for VFX, at least in terms of ease of use. I don't think it has quite as many effects, but it's open source. People can add plugins to it. If you want to do VFX work, I strongly recommend Natron. And I'm using that, and I've already got about half the work I need done for that in sort of an opening sort of sun display. I'm going to roughly recreate the season 2 intro, at least the beginning. But now I have new technology, because I have a great, very high quality, and thanks to Theo for helping provide this, a very high quality model of the ship that they use in Wizards in Space A-Team. And I know how to use it in Blender. So what I'm going to do is, Natron doesn't do 3D. I'll render a transparent 3D animation in Blender and then just import that into Natron as a video, which will be good enough. Yeah, kind of, right. Have you used it? DaVinci is like, it starts up, messes with the audio for some fucking reason. Like if there's music playing, it'll get crackles when Resolve is starting up. It'll give you a bunch, like you can't import project files from other places. You have to have it in the database that it adds onto the system for you. And then you open a project, it crashes immediately, usually. But sometimes it'll actually open it, in which case if you try and do something, it'll crash immediately. Well, that's resolved for you. When I was working on the original Wizards of Space Series 2 intro, I was using DaVinci Resolve, and I lost about 16 hours of work because it crashed and the autosave got corrupted. It was autosaving regularly. The autosave got corrupted when it crashed. 16 hours of work, I had to redo it. So yeah, don't use Resolve if you can possibly avoid it. It's on paper, it seems like a great option because it's relatively free, works on Linux, has good like GPU acceleration support, all this kind of stuff, but it's vastly unreliable, very difficult to work with. It's very corporate, and it doesn't load anything except lossless MOVs. Natron, I drag in like an MP4 that I fucking run through FFmpeg, and I drag in a PNG, I drag in whatever the fuck. It just says, yep, that's good. Fantastic. It doesn't even like have some bullshit 20-minute loading period where it tries to make a proxy before it renders a frame of the interface. No, it just loads it. Done. It's just in. God, it's such a refreshing experience using Natron instead of some of that bullshit. Anyway, let's move on from tech. Either way, intro coming soon. Working on it now. I posted a little sneak preview earlier in Cabal. See if you can find it. Next meme. The duality of man. Doom Eternal guitar medley, the guy who looks even spindlier than me. And then Kirby's Dreamland, green greens, the guy that has that bulging, veiny, steroidal arm. Kind of looks like he's just got done hating Ultima with a black guy. The duality of man. I do feel like there's a balance in all things. This is not, obviously, what happens every time. But you will often see this disparity where there's compensation, a compensatory balance in one area to make up for in another, which is why I say that if someone appears fully ordered on the surface, if you can't see their chaos, be careful of them. Because their chaos is there, it's just not on the surface, it's just hidden somewhere deep below. I give the example sometimes of Trump, who his chaos is on the surface. He's a fucking liar. He's a bullshitter. But he's telling a much greater truth because his order is at the core of his being, whereas the chaos is mostly on the surface. Someone like Snuffy as well. Chaos all out on the surface, and she controls it well, controls her chaos well. Maybe not deliberately, but she might not know she's doing it, but she does. And then Girl DM, order on the surface. Juniper, order on the surface. Others as well. And I think that's why I don't like Girl DM and Juniper, because I just get the feeling that like that order on the surface is a harbinger for danger, a harbinger for them being actually awful. And that's not a conscious dislike. I think it's a natural, instinctive one, but that's possibly part of the reason I enjoy Snuffy. And Snuffy just fits the archetype of the woman I like pretty well, I think, just by coincidence. Verdant, I don't mean that they are always composed, but compared to Snuffy, they are far more restrained, inhibited. And you watch the average Snuffy video, like every other thing she says is like an alert. Her Skyrim streams with Twitch contributing like chaotic events to it have been great. I think there's one I haven't fully finished as well. I recommend them. Again, I have nothing against Juniper or GoldDM or others either. Just, I don't think they're what I'm interested in. Someone like I am as well. The chaos is on the surface for certain. All right, next thing. So, Firearms Policy Coalition, quote, his new software is capable of turning a raw block of aluminium into the receiver for an AR-15 assault rifle in just 3 hours. Technology. Open source terror, how the world's most dangerous crypto-anarchist intends to neutralize Biden's proposed gun control regulations. This is not even much of a meme, it's just, yeah, Chad defending his rights. Again, I'll mention that I'm not a big gun fan myself. I kind of like them in video games and such, but would prefer not to be near them in real life, because it's one of those things where, like, you can die without even seeing it coming. Just suddenly you're dead, on the basis of not trusting some fucker that's just nearby. And that, I think, gives me pause. But I'm not trying to say that they should be restricted, and especially in the US, they are literally one of your fundamental rights. It is part of the literally the Constitution, but it's part of the foundational structures of your nation. The public needs to be sharp and spiky. It's part of the idea of your nation. You know, a more volatile, more libertarian, liberal system in general, more freedom. And part of that is that the public enforce their own power. In the UK, we have a more sort of collective-based way of doing it, which is not necessarily better, by the way. It has its other problems as well, but that's part of the US culture. And that's one of the things, one of the foundational principles that our common opponent here, Chad, is trying to fight against. So even though I'm not much of a gun person, I can't help but admire things like this, which definitely are defended by the Second Amendment, but which governments on various levels in the US and the press don't fucking like. Because frankly, they probably, if we were to summarize it in as few words as possible, it does appear as if the press, governments, and others across the US have been compelled or believe strongly or wish for the US public to be unable to defend themselves in the event of a police state. Which I know is jumping the gun a bit. But is it? Why else would you want to disarm why else would you want to ban assault weapons, quote unquote? Those that are semi-automatic and automatic. Those that are fairly easily convertible into automatic as well. Those that are more like what you would see in war, rather than handguns, which are actually what people use to do crimes with. Why would they be focusing so much on the big, scary guns? Is it because they're big and scary? For some people, that's probably it. But for a few, it's probably because they realize that they are the weapons that would be the most dangerous to tyrants in a police state environment. Not 100%, you know, handguns easier to conceal. But for a town or city or something to declare independence from a tyrannical government because they were armed with weapons that were easy to convert into automatic weapons and just either turned or threw off, murdered the enforcers of the tyranny that were in that place, that would not be good for a tyrant to witness that. And so they would want to try and reduce that as much as possible. Why? What other reason is there? I think there's a stat that like more people die every year in the US of anal insertion than have died in the last 5 years from assault weapons, however that's classified. Because I know that's not really a real classification, but at least in people's minds it is the rifles essentially. Duck says, if you ever travel to the US, get Wes or Doc to take you to a shooting range, you will have I probably will do that, yeah. The thing is, I don't like the idea of being around guns, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't do it. It would just be an apprehension. But I probably would. If I went to the US, I probably would give that a go, yeah. And I may enjoy it, but I'm very low affect. I probably would just see it as like, yes, that is what firing a gun is like. Pretty much what I expected. I probably would be more physically. If no one expects the knockback the first time, I don't think. The kickback, rather. But because I know that, maybe I would more so. And I don't think I'd see it as much different in concept as doing it in FPS games, except obviously you can feel through your entire body, but that probably doesn't mean much to me. I think I would like to compare the distinction in handling and in use between a bullpup configuration and a normal configuration of a rifle. What is it? It's not the P90, not the AUG, the other bullpup. What's the other one between those two? The FN, I can't remember. Someone in chat will get it. Maybe the FAMAS. Maybe I am. I think I am thinking of. I think the AUG is the one I was thinking I would want to test actually. Test the AUG. Test possibly like a standard one like the AK-47 or the is it the M4, M14 or AR-15? Similar, I know. Test them and compare what the difference in handling is like. And probably classic like newcomer ambition. But if I was to fire guns and I was to have like decent carte blanche over which guns I could fire, probably would want to try a Desert Eagle just to see how powerful it is. Ethos says kinetic weapons, how barbaric and antiquated. Yes, I prefer the tongue as well. I use my tongue in a way different as a weapon than how women use it. But anyway. Next meme. Yeah, so this isn't really a meme. This is just spotted in the wild. r/anti-work. I think at some point, chat, probably what we'll do is a few streams where we just go to different subreddits and see all the cancer. Because there's a lot of cancer on various subreddits, and anti-work is one of them. These are literally people who are ideologically opposed to work. And I just feel like, okay, next you'll tell me you're ideologically opposed to breathing oxygen. Work is not some artificial bullshit that humans invented. Work is what you need to do in the universe to survive in it. Work is literally part of the biological, just any biology works as part of its, whether that work is just like spreading, multiplying like bacteria, or much, much more complex and nuanced things like humans. The people who are r/anti-work, it is hard for me to be more nuanced than to simply say they are probably just lazy and trying to find a rationalization for that. And unfortunately, that means probably quite a lot of them are ADHD. I have never made a claim that ADHD people are all on our side. I think there are tendencies in that lead people towards different ideas. I think that there is a strain of ADHD that tends people to be like transfixed with being honest and truthful. I think the expressions about Washington, I think it was Washington, or was it Jefferson, being unable to tell a lie. I've been thinking it's a long shot, obviously, but that may come from the same thing, the same sort of strain of ADHD that these people do that. I don't know if it is ADHD, actually, but I see it commonly in people with ADHD. And I think a lot of you in the server have that same strain. Probably almost all of you, actually. Anyway, next thing. Speaking of which, says major study. New studies show. Peer-reviewed. Scientists have discovered. Study finds. Experts weigh in. Yeah. The Scar L as well. That's one I'd like to try. I don't think any of you posted it, but the one Daka just posted reminded me of the Scar L. Anyway, so yeah, I went into a few streams ago a meme about how the sort of midwit left deals with truth and the scientism thing. I went into that in great detail, and I'm happy with the way I did. I don't think I will do it again here, but I will quickly summarize what I sort of postulated then, and I haven't seen any reason to think this isn't true, that the low wit reasons by mere common sense and personal biological biases. The possible modifications they use. The top wit, or the high wit, or whatever you want to call it, reasons on the basis of the scientific method, essentially, abstracted or modified into contextual situations, so they can examine the methodology of studies, whereas the low wit can't even examine the study. However, the midwit argues on the basis of authorities, on orthodoxy, on understanding what is generally believed, not really critically analyzing what is generally believed, but just understanding what is generally believed. They will usually rely on the high wits, on the institutions that allow the knowledge of the high wits to be filtered by other high wits and then make their way down to the midwits that can then absorb it. This is a means of information acquisition, which is probably okay in most cases, good enough. But then what happens if the elites, the intellectuals of a society, betray everyone else and start propagating pure lies as popular ideology? Then the working class, some of them pick up some parts of it, but most of them don't. They just don't bother. They may not know why. Some of them don't like it. Some of them can notice it as a discrete thing. But most of them just don't bother. The midwits, however, they fucking eat that shit up. Because finally they have an excuse from their betters to hate a bunch of people. Finally they have an excuse to feel something. They have an excuse to action. An excuse to use their ideas to be supported by those around them. An excuse to get social validation for merely believing things and for taking actions that mean essentially nothing on that basis. Or actions that sometimes do mean something. But they'll still get social validation for it. and still be aggressive and still feel superior to other people merely by believing what is the orthodoxy. Now, the orthodoxy was mostly artificially inseminated. A lot of highwits, a great deal of intellectuals in society did not betray everyone, but a small number of them did. Just enough and in just such a way as to create this effect. Now, there's a whole lot of highwits as well who have been taken in by various parts of it. Because it's a very insidious means that this is being spread. And frankly, even a lot of highwits rely on institutions for the things that they are not high-witted about, things they don't know very well. It's only really the working class who are immune, and small portions of mid and high-wits, like people like us, who actually look into it. But the working class are not immune, but they are somewhat resistant to it. But the high-wits are not very resistant at all, and the mid-wits are just complete fucking pawns. These indeed are the midwits. All of the text on this screen references appeals to authority. Now, appeals to authority is sometimes fine because it's a shortcut to saying, don't worry, we've checked the methodology in this study. We've checked everything about it. It was correct. We say so. And if you've got a society with a rigorous institution for truth-finding, that's good. Yeah, it probably is good. And a lot of the things claimed by modern science, even popular science, probably are true. But just enough of them are total fucking deceptions. With big piles of money, essentially. All over the shop. And so you end up with this kind of situation. Appeals to authority. Often good, because the authority does know their stuff. But then if the authority decides, we'll lie this time. Or, well, I've been told it's true and I'm not going to question it, or I'll lose my job, or some other consequence. I'll lose social validation, social status. And then they say something is true when it's not. And then that's why appealing to authority as an argument is a logical fallacy, because it doesn't make it right. However, in practical circumstances, appealing to authority is useful if you say, this indicates, this suggests, this demonstrates, or not demonstrates because that implies true, but if you don't imply that you're right because, but you imply that here is a support for this position from an authority, then even if the other person accepts it, it doesn't make you right. It just means, yeah, that seems to be indicated by this authority. But it's still contingent on whether you can trust the authority. It's still contingent on the quality of the methodology. We were in a time, I'm afraid, where this amount of nuance in truth-finding has to be done if you actually care about the truth. In a better time, you wouldn't necessarily need to, because you can more so trust men of science to tell you the truth. But when there's so much ideology and so much money in deception, I'm afraid that it's nowhere near as easy to do so. Let's rearrange this a little bit. Since it's moved. There we go. Okay. So there you go. Another rant on how truth works. Something I'm quite passionate about. Next thing. Woke people talking about how they are the revolution. I think it's a Simpsons scene with a guy spray painting "Obey the rules" on the wall. There's an episode of Black Mirror, which is a show that I find to be mostly pretty good, but questionable at times. Because I'm not sure what it is, but I have an uneasy dislike of it. But I do actually quite like it. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but anyway, it makes some good stories, some good arguments. One of the shows they have, my interpretation of it, one of the episodes, it's basically dystopian fantasy. Sometimes future, sometimes present. It's sort of like dark ideas that they play with, and some of them, they're all pretty good ideas. One of the ideas that it posits is a society in which there's sort of a social order which looks dystopian to us today and is horrible to us today, but most of the people there are okay with it. And frankly, future might look something like that. But, even for that, it looks like it's a bit too abusive, a bit too mechanical. I don't think it would actually sustain, because human nature would resist against it because it's just too much of the same bullshit. But maybe it wouldn't. Either way, dystopia, it seems dystopian to us, and it seems dystopian to a character that's in it as well. And the character rebels. The character goes on a talent show because no one else will listen, and starts talking about how the system is wrong, how it's dystopian, how people are not human anymore, essentially. And instead of people saying, my God, he's right, this system is broken, we should change it, they say, oh, that was a fantastic act, let's give it up for this guy. And I thought the lesson I took away from that show, that episode, and eventually he becomes a celebrity. Like, a celebrity dissenter. No one takes his dissent seriously. The message I took away from that show is anything can be integrated into a strong enough system, even dissent against that system. Which is kind of what happened with people like me on YouTube. Unfortunately, there's not a lot I can do about it either. But this is kind of that. It's a bastardization of dissent that's fully integrated into the system. Now, in the original story of The Simpsons here, I don't think that's exactly what it was, but that's what I'm using it as for this example. There probably are quite a lot of good examples of this, especially something that would have been dissent in a former time. That's very common. But even current dissent. Like, I think Alex Jones is somewhat this. Like, controlled opposition is not far off from this idea. Now, I'm not saying Alex Jones is controlled opposition. I'm saying that the people that he is opposed to don't mind him existing because Alex Jones is taken literally not seriously. When he's often right, but he also often sounds insane. I make no commentary on how accurate that is. I don't think you could be right as often as he is without, whilst also being completely insane, but he may be a little bit insane. Either way, he sounds it. And so he is not voluntarily or knowingly, but he is in a sense controlled opposition, I think. A very light sense, not one that implies malice on his part. But his opponents don't mind him existing. It's sort of like containment. You put something unappealing to most people in your opponent's camp, and they're less likely to be in that camp. You just have to say conspiracy theorists, and they all think of those silly things that Alex Jones has said, which if you look in more detail, probably analogies for things that are true and important. But they just think of the crazy stuff. It's that kind of thing. You want to be mindful of that. It's also connected to the idea of feds everywhere. Sort of controlled opposition in that regard. Controlling your opposition into thinking that everyone is you. It is their enemy. There is a balance to be struck there. Where, yeah, some people probably are feds. We know that they do that. But we should not be ossified by the fear of their existence. Right, next thing. Who remembers David Hogg? Now, remind me, chat, was he a survivor of like a school shooting or something who became a big anti-gun advocate? Well, here he is now. I wasn't expecting this, frankly. I wasn't expecting this to be where this went. The conclusion of the David Hogg story. No, he was a kid at home, says Verdant, survivor of a shooting. Either way, this apparently is him now. I don't know what to say about this, except that there's no bulge. Like, just saying. I don't know if this is even real, or this is like a brother or a lookalike or something. But yeah, here it is. Let's see what the comments are. See if any of them are saying it's real or not. This isn't a real. Someone's asking if this is a real picture. Someone is saying it's real. According to a Twitter user, it's real. I can't see any hog. Definitely skips leg day. Why are you so concerned about what he's wearing? Seems like you like, yeah, it's, every time a criticism is made of someone looking ridiculous, the accusation. It's like with AOC, the accusation of you just want to date them. It's like, no, I'm focusing on it because it's fucking ridiculous. Not because I'm into it, retard. It's a desperate last-ditch effort to bat off criticism. What in the Portland to Paducah transplant is that? No idea what that means. The fuck is going on here? There's no clarity in the comments. No one knows what the fuck is going on. It's apparently this exists, though. Yep, apparently this exists. Now I shall leave you with this vision of the hell that is to come, chat. If it gets worse, remember this. This will be the image of worse. Chilgon says, is he trans now? I doubt he needs to be that rigid with his definitions. I would suggest that he is just a person of fluid whatever else. No categories. In fact, he's not even a person. You know what? No categories. Categories bad. Except anti-racist. Oh, no, that's an important category. You notice, like, make some things fluid and some things rigid. Well, he's certainly not making anyone fluid or rigid. Am I right, chat? Let's move on to the next thing. Bestiality. Danielle Hui, 20, was caught on camera forcing a dog to give her oral sex. Now, comments about women and dogs aside, because she's not a white woman, what irony, a dog eating an Asian. Very good. Yes, I did have this meme up merely for that joke. It's pretty good. Yeah, Marsh says he's just starved for attention. Yeah, he got too much attention too quickly, and now he's desperate. Let's move on. Last meme, which we already had, so that's it for the meme section. Right, now we shall have another content vote. I think I might stay solo on the stream and not have any guests. But content vote. As I said earlier, there are two fairly positive and important news stories that I think we should cover. So I do recommend that at some point today we vote news, and I might just do the stories at the end if no one votes for it. Theo says, how can you look Boomer in the eyes after saying that joke? I'm not sure why I wouldn't be able to. Usually, look him in the eyes the same way I look anything in the eyes. With disgust and derision. Eb needs white pill news, apparently. Yeah, one story is a fairly, like a moderately big white pill, and the other one's a minor, but still notable white pill. Most people are voting for news. It's a fairly clear lead, so I think I will give it 10 seconds. We'll see what happens. Give it less time than usual. Yes, Eb betraying the TVUP. Is Eb even in the TVUP? So, let's have a look. Theo betrayed the TVUP by voting for news. Although he did also vote for Tomboys and VTubers, to be fair. Let's see, who else betrayed the TVUP? I don't see anyone, actually. Just Theo, as usual. Theo ever, the TVUP flake. Sasha, I'm not sure if Eb is still in the Eb extermination party. He may have been kicked out. What is the opinion of the leaders of the Eb extermination party on whether Eb is allowed to join your party? Eb says he's in no party. All right, so the vote is, it's not changing. It's going to be news. So we'll do news. The Eb, right. All right, let's have a look. And I will do the good stories first. So, good news, everyone. This is, okay, so let me show this first, right? Good news, everyone. SCOTUS threw away the vaccine mandate. Biden's vaccine mandate. It's dead. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck, because maybe I misunderstood something about the American system, but SCOTUS said no. The problem with this is, the reason I'm showing the whipsword, the reason I'm showing this, which is the search results for this story, is that none of the mainstream are reporting on it. We've got a story from Sentinel KSMO. We've got a story from Nat Law Review, a story from Daily Caller, which I have open, because I have heard of that one. A story from LifeSite News, which I've heard of. Counter.News, Washington Examiner, which I've heard of, but that's not the same story. So none of the mainstream are reporting on this story. It's been active for a few hours. I hate to suggest the possibility that they're just ignoring it. The New York Times here that I just clicked, they are reporting on it, but with a negative angle, with like a, here's the problem with it, which we'll look into now. But I have not, it's been very rare that I have seen such an obvious refusal to cover something in the news. If the mainstream press, the corporate press, covered this story, it would spread the notion to Americans, including employers and employees, that they don't have to get vaccinated. Right now, a lot of people are probably just thinking, I heard a lot about vaccine mandates and about corporations. My boss is telling me I have to get vaccinated. I guess I have to get vaccinated. No, you fucking don't. They don't. There's no mandate, as far as I know. And this has just been refused by the Supreme Court. Now, we have, as I said, the Daily Caller article, which is talking about them blocking the mandate, but then also liberals push for court packing after. So they added something onto the story. I don't know why they didn't just report on the story. It is a big story. I don't know why it's been so small. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Maybe they've just like paused it or something, but it doesn't sound like it. So I'll read this for a bit and then I'll go and see what the hell the New York Times is saying about it, because they're the only mainstream source I've seen talking about it. And they are giving it a negative spin, obviously, as they are bound to. But we'll have a look at that in a minute. Why is that story there? If you want to just scroll up. So let's have a look at this. And so, as I said, this story is about them asking for court packing, not about the OSHA mandates. But we'll see what they say. So, oh, interesting. Okay, this is their main story on it. Supreme Court blocks Biden's vaccine or testing rule for businesses, allows healthcare worker mandate to move forward. That one's more expected, but still. Supreme Court blocked President Joe Biden's vaccine or testing rule for private businesses with 100 plus employees Thursday, but ruled to reinstate the administration's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers, which is more understandable, but still not sure that should be mandated. What do you think, chat? For those actually working in medical environment? Yeah. But like that is, an issue. But the main one, the one that would have affected hundreds of millions of Americans, is the other one for all businesses, which has been blocked. That's the big one, and that's gone. The court began hearing arguments January 7th regarding Biden's two mandates, which he announced in 2021 and are set to affect almost 100 million workers. The first policy is a vaccine or testing rule for private businesses with 100 plus employees, which we've talked about for a long time and said that's horrible, but it looks like it's gone. The second policy is a vaccine mandate for any healthcare worker operating out of a facility that receives Medicaid and Medicare funding, minus those who qualify for religious and medical exemptions. See, that's not too bad. That's actually not as bad as I was expecting. That's basically the federal worker mandate, which they already have in place, which is very questionable as well, but they can get away with it because it's federal. It is kind of federal because it's about ones that get national funding, which arguably is one of the reasons for introducing nationalized healthcare measures, even to a small extent in the first place, because then you can say these hospitals are publicly funded, so the federal government has authority. Just came up with that idea, but maybe that's true. And then qualify for religious and medical exemptions. Bruh, it's not difficult to take up a religion. Just say that you, whatever it takes, like, say that you're a Hasidic Jew and you deny your religion defies any vaccinations. Or, go with whatever. If you have autism, say that you are prone to, actually that works with masks, that's a different thing, but for masks, I was advised that you could say that you are autistic and that you're prone to meltdowns if your face is covered. If it ever comes up, if someone actually asks, I will essentially just say that will violate my medical right to privacy. But if for whatever reason I am forced to go beyond that, I will give reference to my diagnosed ADHD and say, yeah, I reckon having a mask on my face would cause a lot of issues. Don't have to be any more specific than that, I don't think. I doubt it'll get that far, though. So while the policies were announced in November, enforcement has not yet begun due to lawsuits. Again, chat, press 1 if your employer or an employer that you are aware of has been acting as if this should be enforced, because I'm sure there have been some. I know there will have been. Ethos says, more shit can go wrong with the handling and storage for the shot than it is to get over the damn bug. Yes. That's probably true. Yeah, so anyone pressing 1, those employers had no right to enforce that. And yet, I bet a bunch of employees went along with it, didn't they? The Supreme Court blocked Biden's private business rule 6-3, which is a pretty good margin, actually. That's some. Well, and sorry, no, that's all the Republicans, because there's 6 Republican-leaning judges. All of them voted against it, which is good because there were questions about 1 or 2 of them being any good. All the Democrats voted for it, but that is in fact the correct outcome. Noting the Secretary of Labor doesn't have the authority to impose the mandate, the court added that Congress should have decided the rules. I think even if Congress say so, they don't get to overrule the Constitution, and it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment to essentially, and part of the enforcement would be asking someone if they have been vaccinated. Just say, nope, Fourth Amendment, you can't ask me that. What are they going to do? Duck says it's actually not that easy to get religious exemptions for things in the US. It does require documentation and long-standing within a recognized religious organization that has espoused the belief you are claiming for the exemption. That's a shame. I didn't know that. Java says that means Roberts didn't cuck for once. Yeah, and neither did Trump's new femoid one either. So, quote, although Congress has indisputably given OSHA the power to regulate occupational dangers, it has not given that agency the power to regulate public health more broadly. The Supreme Court wrote in its opinion, adding that requiring vaccinations for the roughly 84 million Americans that this would affect falls in the latter category, which I think is not an easy argument to make from that angle, actually, but I'm glad they did make it. Justices Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan dissented from the private business decision, declaring that we are not wise. Is that some tradition thing that they say that? Quote, in the face of a still raging pandemic, it's not. This court tells the agency charged with protecting worker safety that it may not do so in all the workplaces needed. As disease and death continue to mount, this court tells the agency that it cannot respond in the most effective way possible, they wrote in the dissent, which is all bullshit and based on misinformation. I will quickly go through. The pandemic is not still raging. Protecting worker safety. Workers are not necessarily always safe from, shall we say, solar storms. But you're not asking them to carry around a ton of lead around their body so that they are all the time, are you? There are some things outside of just worker safety. Sorry, there are some things that regard the safety of workers that are not part of workplace safety. They could be at risk from being stabbed by a friend. You don't have their friends constantly audited to make sure that they're safe from that. You don't have them wear stab-proof vests all the time just in case. There are some things that are not part of workplace safety that do regardless affect the safety of workers or regard the safety of workers. That is one of them, whether they are vaccinated or not. This is sort of biosocial engineering, not to act like that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's trying to manage the way people interact with each other in the regards of biology to reduce bad effects. It's not the same thing as make sure that someone's holding the ladder when you go up it. It's a much broader matter than that. I think you can make that argument. It wouldn't necessarily be the best angle. I think you can make that argument. As disease and death continue to mount, which is not really true, the stats cannot be trusted at all, and disease mounting doesn't say a damn thing about how bad it is, and death mounting, not really. The number goes up, but only very slowly, and it's mostly the old, mostly those who were soon to die anyway, and would probably have died from the flu or the cold either way. This court tells the agency that it cannot respond in the most effective way possible, which, again, is that even true? We have seen some studies that show that the vaccines help with immunity, but not a huge amount, not as much as been advertised. And if you have the virus once, then natural immunity will be much stronger than the vaccine anyway. From more data that we've seen indicates that. Those who are young and who can get and endure the virus, which is almost everyone, because at this point it's very mild by comparison, should probably just get it. Probably better off just getting it and enduring it. putting up with it for a few days, maybe even just one day, maybe not even bad enough to stop you going into work. And then you're done. You're immune to it for, don't know. But different sources give different numbers, but it's always pretty high. It's never as low as a few months, which is what was said earlier. It's often a year or more. Some sources I've seen say forever. Well, that's unlikely, though. So, quote, that's the same thing. The trio added, without legal basis, they say, the dissenters say, the court usurps a decision that rightfully belongs to others. I don't think that's true. I don't think they get to make that decision at all, actually. It undercuts the capacity of the responsible federal officials acting well within the scope of their authority to protect American workers from grave danger. Well, that lot is what was argued. You guys are welcome to present your claim there, but I don't think it was the one that won out in the end. And it's not grave danger unless they're really old. And if they're really old, why are they in the workplace? Biden first announced this rule in September, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued rules on it in November. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit issued a temporary halt of this OSHA rule November 6th, and the halt was upheld by the court November 12th. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals subsequently overturned the ruling in December. In a narrower decision, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 to allow Biden's rule for healthcare workers to take effect across the country. So 4 said no to that. It was very close. The Supreme Court noted that vaccine requirements for healthcare workers are common, echoing an argument made by this administration. See, that is true. It's these vaccines are not the same as others. They're rushed, and for something that's not particularly bad. If there was suddenly to be a vaccine for, I don't know, name a vaccine for like a throat infection, or like an ear infection, something minor that's likely to have no ill effects and just be a bit annoying. If there was a vaccine for that, would you mandate it nationwide for all health workers? Especially if it was like, yeah, we made this yesterday, we didn't test it yet. Mandated. No, I don't think you would. I think it's being done because of the fear and panic over COVID. Probably. Quote, we agree with the government that the Health and Human Services Secretary's rule falls within the authorities that Congress has conferred upon him. The majority wrote in a separate opinion from the business ruling. And as I say, like, it's understandable that that one was less opposed by the Supreme Court because they are literally health workers, but still, I don't think there's a good enough argument for mandating it. It's not far off, though. I can understand. What do you guys think? I think I know the answer already, but do you consider this, aside from just your resistance to the orthodoxy, do you think it is fair, press 1, to mandate these vaccines for healthcare workers, specifically those interacting with patients? Or do you think, 2, it still isn't right to do that with them? Right, says they would if they could. Yeah, I'm talking about what's reasonable, though. I'm trying to make a comparison with what's reasonable. But I agree. At the moment, if Pfizer had developed it, then yes, they would if they could. All right, all of you are saying no. Fair enough. I will take that under advisement. So, next thing. Not next thing, but next paragraph. Well, let's go to the next thing, because we'll do this now. So, this is the New York Times' take on it, because as I said, this is the only corporate media source I've seen talking about this. Businesses are whipsawed, a word I don't think I've ever heard, again as the Supreme Court blocks OSHA's vaccine mandate. The thing is, I assume what they mean here is like whiplashed, so the decision keeps changing. But the thing is, the decision was never made in the first place. It was proposed legislation. Businesses should have held off until it was actually made law. Unless that was the business's personal policy, then they can say you must, but then I don't think they can ultimately coerce it. And they could get sued if they fire someone on that basis, I expect. A requirement that large companies mandate vaccines or weekly testing for workers was blocked by the Supreme Court on Thursday, leaving the often fraught choice up to employers. Parts of the rule, which the Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued in November, have been scheduled to take effect on Monday. Not sure which parts of the rule. Oh, had been and are now cancelled. Okay. Vaccine mandates have been a controversial approach to battling the pandemic, say the New York Times. United Airlines and Tyson Foods are among the major companies that already have such requirements, but many others are waiting for legal battles to be resolved. Well, good, they should be. It was never required. Walmart, Amazon, and JP Morgan Chase, 3 of the largest private employers in the US, have yet to issue broad requirements for their staff. It's interesting. A spokesman for Macy's, which began to request the vaccinations out of its employees this month, said the retailer was evaluating this late-breaking development. Oh dear. Some companies with vaccine mandates said keeping those policies might become more difficult in light of the Supreme Court's ruling. Franz Spielvogel, who owns Laughing Planet, a chain of fast casual restaurants with more than 200 employees, required his employees to be fully vaccinated or submit to weekly testing by mid-January and does not plan to change that rule. But the Supreme Court's decision frustrated him, he said, because he no longer has federal cover to justify his policy. No, you don't. The tyrants are not on your side. Well, actually, they are, but the institution around them isn't completely on their side, or yours. Quote, it turns into a bit of a head-scratcher for us, Mr. Spielvogel said, though the recent surge of COVID-19 cases has made him feel more strongly about the need for a mandate. The recent advertisement of stats that can't be trusted, that would number go up, ooh, bad. As a business owner, as an employer, and as someone dealing with the public, I want my customers to know they're walking into a safe place. Well, they're not if you're going to be anal about medical requirements for basically what is now the cold. That's not safe at that point. Not safe from nutters. And yeah, again, I'll just say this again, right? Because this is something that I don't think was ever explicitly claimed by the people pushing it, but is believed by a lot of people. The vaccines, as far as we can tell, do not change your likelihood of spreading the virus. They have no effect at all. So mandating vaccines in your workplace does not change how likely it is that your workers will give the virus to people that come in, except to the extent that it might shorten the illness and reduce the amount of time that they have it. So it's not safe in any sense. It's slightly safer if the vaccine works as advertised. In a November poll of 543 companies by the consulting firm Willis Towers Watson, 57% said they either required or planned to require COVID-19 vaccinations. That's a lot, but not as many as I would have expected. That included 32% that planned to mandate vaccines only if the OSHA rule takes effect. Well, that number being a high portion of the 57 is good, because now they won't. It's sensible to wait. 7% said they planned to carry it out regardless of the outcome. A little more than 70% of the adult US population is fully vaccinated. It's harrowing how quickly that happened as well. Quote, our recent survey suggests that many more employers would have pursued vaccine mandates if the rule was left in place, Dr. Jeffrey Levin-Schertz, who leads the consulting firm's clinical response to the coronavirus, said in a statement. Some companies have been concerned about losing employees when workers are already scarce, and although firms with mandates have said those concerns have largely not come to fruition, a national requirement could have further eased those concerns. So, I don't think there's much more to comment on this than what I already said. That the only whiplash involved is with people that took up this proposed policy as a real one far too hastily. So New York Times is whining about nothing there. I think there was one other thing. This is a summary of a lot of things that happened recently, but including this, and then we'll go on to our other story. So from Election Wizard on a site, I don't know who linked me this with some Twitter knockoff. Election Wizard said, don't stop, press harder. The Biden regime is reeling after a series of major disappointments. OSHA mandate struck down, election bill dead, which I didn't know about, but that's very good. The HR 1, was it? Build Back Better dead. I didn't know if that was a specific thing. Was that an infrastructure bill? Biden at 33% approval in Quinnipiac poll. That's really low, if you can trust it at all. Inflation hits a 40-year high. Keep going, a maximum pressure. Well, that last one isn't really good, but it will make him look worse, which isn't difficult. I'm guessing that Quinnipiac is one of those more conservative-leaning pollsters that uses a different methodology, where often, because it differs from the majority, it's viewed as, it's just conservative biased. But then recent cultural events in the last few years have indicated that, oh, maybe the majority are fucking wrong. Maybe they're actually lying more so than just being wrong. Maybe people like, I think Rasmussen's another conservative-leaning one, and Quinnipiac maybe as well, from the sounds of it. Maybe that's the accurate result, and if so, 33% is very low. Trump never got below about 40, I don't think. And that's Trump, with all the hate from the press. But I don't know. There's probably a lot of distinction there. Maybe Quinnipiac gave him lower results as well. Bright says, why would mandating vaccination help businesses retain workers? Could it be that workers don't want to get vaccinated to the point of quitting their jobs for ones that don't mandate it? Yeah, there will be a lot of that. Then again, as mentioned, only 30% of the US public are not vaccinated. That's, again, harrowing how quickly that happened. Yeah, I don't know, Stasha. I hadn't heard about that. However, we are going to move on now to... Yeah, good point. So the mandate, the primary reason for it would be to prevent transmission. We're now going to move on to the next positive story, okay? And then we'll do some other stories. Some of the ones I've got here are just neutral or funny, even. We'll do a positive story. So that was the moderate to major positive story. That's good news. But now, a somewhat more minor one, but speaks well of my home nation. Which one of these is it? Give me a second, just find out which one it is. I think it's this one. Yes. This is the one people were linking. The Duke of York has been stripped of all military titles and patronages and will no longer use his Royal Highness title, Buckingham Palace has said. He will defend his sexual abuse case as a private citizen. Queenie has dropped Prince Andrew loose to the wolves. Good. And if he's innocent, which he's fucking not, let's face it, if he's innocent, sure, give it back, I don't care. If he's innocent, but he's not. So yes, correct decision. Good job, Queen. Did something right. Ebb says, good, hang the bastard. And if he, I don't know if this is even on the cards, but if theoretically he was extradited to the US, then that's potentially on the table, the death sentence. I'm not saying I want that. I'm actually against capital punishment from governments and vigilantes for the same reasons, actually. But still, may he be punished appropriately for any crimes he has committed, which is probably very many. Let's have a look at the actual article, shall we? Let's see if there's any more details. The devil is often in those. Let's see if this is paywall, shall we? It's not. Good. The Queen exiles Prince Andrew from royal life over sex abuse scandal. Duke of York loses all patronages, military roles, and his Royal Highness title, and will have to defend allegations against him as a private citizen. The Duke of York has been stripped of etc., etc., in an attempt to protect the royal family from the fallout of his sexual abuse case. Now, that is, I think, editorialization. That's not something that the royal family said. That's the Telegraph being a bit too liberal with positing their editorialization as if it's part of the facts data. It isn't necessarily to protect the royal family from the fallout of a sexual abuse case. That almost certainly is a factor. It certainly is a factor. But is it the main reason? Or have they finally just got sick of the fucker and decided, yeah, he is a paedophile. Why are we defending him? There's probably something has happened, but either way, it is the right answer, and it doesn't necessarily just come down to protecting them from public scrutiny. The announcement was made after Prince Andrew, 61, was summoned to Windsor Castle for a 45-minute meeting with his mother, amid increasing speculation that he will have to pay off his accuser, Virginia Roberts Giuffre. However, the Duke insisted he would continue to defend the civil case related to the friendship with the billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein as a private citizen, declaring it a marathon, not a sprint. The case will see British witnesses deposed by Miss Giuffre's legal team, with speculation that the Duke's ex-wife, the Duchess of York, and eldest daughter, Princess Beatrice, could be asked to give evidence. It is understood that the Queen's decision was taken following lengthy discussions between Her Majesty, 95, and the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Cambridge. I think that's... Duke of Cambridge, I think, is her son, Philip, and Prince of Wales, I think, is his son, William, but I'm not an expert. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. I may have got this backwards as well. It's understood that the Queen's decision was taken... I've read the bit. Regardless of whether there is a trial or a settlement, the legal process is likely to be extremely embarrassing for the royal family. It's thought that this development is an attempt to shield the royal family and leaves no way back to a public role for the Queen's second son, with all official ties severed, leaving him in a form of internal exile. As I said before, if, and this is very unlikely, but if he is found innocent on all counts, I don't see why they couldn't give the roles back. But he's not, is he? Prince of Wales is Charles, William is the Duke of Cambridge. Okay, yeah, so I just got them backwards. And yeah, I may have said Philip, but I get Charles and Philip confused. I think Charles is the son and Philip is the husband. I think that's right. I don't deal with the royal family in news very often. Right. Regardless of whether there is the unprecedented move represents the second time in just 2 years that a senior royal born as His Royal Highness has been asked not to use the title as an official capacity following the departure of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to the US. That's the ginger nut and his even nuttier wife, who we have you Americans to thank for. Then again, he is an illegitimate child, so he's not really part of the royal family. A Buckingham Palace spokesman issued the following statement, and it's probably just the same thing. With the Queen's approval and agreement, the Duke of York's military affiliations and royal patronage have been returned to the Queen. That's the language they use for it. Duke of York will continue not to undertake any public duties in defending, in this case, a private citizen. So very short and to the point. A royal source said all the Duke's roles have been handed back to the Queen with immediate effect for redistribution to other members of the royal family. They will not be returned to the Duke, apparently. So she's saying that they won't ever, but that doesn't necessarily mean they won't if he's found innocent, but they probably fucking realise he isn't. Prince Andrew will no longer use the style His Royal Highness in the official capacity, which means he could do that if he wanted to. He could insist people call him that. He could call himself that, but it wouldn't be official. It'd be like if I did it. To be fair, chat, you should call me His Royal Highness. To be fair, saying that might be treason, actually. You know, do not crime. Do not crime. Don't call me His Royal Highness unless you really want to. Anyway. The Duke is accused of raping or sexually assaulting Mrs. Giuffre on 3 separate occasions when she was 17, after she was trafficked by Epstein. Now, I must add that although the information around this case has seemed to suggest that he is guilty, he is still innocent until proven guilty. And everything I've been saying today about contingent on him being found guilty and how likely he is to be guilty is all speculative, non-binding, and I hold the principle that he is innocent till proven guilty. Not just as a policy of good legal practice, but also because rape allegations are often used as a weapon against innocent men. Sometimes they're true, though. That's the problem with that. That's why they're powerful. Sometimes they are true. I expect that's the case here. An attempt to have the case dismissed on a technicality was on Wednesday rejected by a New York judge, leaving the Duke facing the prospect of a trial by jury. Probably wouldn't go well for him with it, because he doesn't come across as an innocent man, does he? Judge Lewis Kaplan unequivocally denied the Duke's motion, handing down a 46-page ruling that contained a point-by-point rebuttal of his arguments. I bet they were terrible arguments. I'd love to read them at some point. A source close to the Duke said, given the robustness with which Judge Kaplan greeted our arguments, we are unsurprised by the ruling. You're, I think, implying that he's being unfair, but I bet he isn't. However, it was not a judgment on the merit of Miss Giuffre's allegations. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and the Duke will continue to defend himself against these claims. Yes, there could be public confusion on a judge giving a bad decision or a unfavorable decision to Prince Andrew, which people might interpret as he's been found guilty of rape. No, he's just been denied the opportunity to dismiss the case on a technicality. The Duke had until now clung onto his honorary military titles, including the coveted Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, despite pressure from senior military figures. Yeah, I bet the military aren't happy being associated with them. As a former member of the armed forces, the Duke, who served in the Royal Navy, retains his current military rank of Vice Admiral, which I'm sure he earned duly. He also remains 9th in line to the throne, and as such is still a Councillor of State, a role undertaken by any spouse of the monarch and the next 4 adults in the line of succession. They are currently Prince Charles, Prince William, Prince Harry, and Prince Andrew. Harry, I guess Harry is related, so he would technically be, but he shouldn't be bloody in line for the throne at this point. In the event that the Queen cannot undertake her official duties as sovereign on a temporary basis due to illness or absence abroad, 2 or more councillors of state are appointed by letters patent to act in her place. A lot of cool old British tradition stuff there, which I'm not very familiar with. The kind of thing that is not often used, but probably would be quite interesting to look into. So there's that story. So there's your white pills for today. And now I give you a fucking rainbow pill, because this is just kind of clown world hilarious. Now, I don't like talking about Joe Biden erecting things, but this is an exception. Joe Biden erects concrete security wall around White House, but, Gateway Pundit says, leaves US border wide open. Oh, look, Joe. Walls work. Ah, that's interesting. So, the militarization of your nation's capital continues. The thing about, 60,000 troops in position for the inauguration of the new quote-unquote president, if that wasn't indication enough of upside-down American flag time, of 3% time, of watering time, then further militarization of the capital is continuing. This is the kind of thing, well, for example, V for Vendetta, near the end, where, spoilers ahead, for a very good movie, where Sutcliffe has been removed from power, where the people are marching on Parliament with their Guy Fawkes masks, and where the military defending Parliament have erected like this colossal great frontier of concrete barriers behind which they are all standing ready to fire on the protesters, which fortunately in the end they don't, because they don't get the call from the High Chancellor, so they just let them through. It's very evocative of that, isn't it? And that happens during a deep dystopian society. Here we have it happening around the White House. Now, maybe I'm missing something. I haven't read the text. Let's go into the text, shall we? The Biden admin built a concrete security wall around the White House this week. It's not clear yet why they believe the construction of the concrete wall is necessary. Do you know why the White House is erecting a perimeter concrete blast and security fence directly around the building? Asked one Twitter user. Let's have a look at the images, shall we? So we saw that one already, and there's this one. Partway constructing it. And there's this one. Interesting. So it's not around the total perimeter. It's inside the grounds. This is really fucking bad. Like this as an image, this is really fucking bad. As a symbol. This is like the people at the head of the nation know things are going to shit, and instead of trying to do something about it, they're just trying to protect themselves. That's not a good situation to be in. Why is it patient? There we go. So here's a video from it.
Guys, it's 8 a.m. on Tuesday.
Hold on. There is audio, but I'm not plugged in, so I don't know what the audio is, so I should check before I let it broadcast to you guys. Right.
Here, Lafayette Park, and I'm at the White House, and it's hard to see exactly what they're doing. They got an excavator here, and it doesn't look like it's doing any digging. It's moving these Jersey barriers, and they're putting up like a wall, small wall, and this is the fountain in front of the White House that's now been turned off. And so, who knows what they're doing? But it's not uncommon when they do projects. If I were to show you the Capitol, or even the other side on the ellipse where they were still finishing this fence, this big fence here. Oftentimes when they're doing work, or all the time when they're doing work at the White House or the Capitol or most government buildings, they do cover them up and create like a barrier so we can't see what's going on behind. But so it almost looks like they are maybe doing some work with this fountain or something. I'm not really sure.
So that's a good call. That's a possibility. I'm not sure that they would use concrete barriers for that in that case. And some of that looks like wood. Maybe that's just to cover the area behind it. So this is why we read the text. Maybe that's true. Maybe this is not like militarizing the grounds of the White House. Maybe it's to cover up some other work. But then I'm not sure why they would use concrete dividers for that. Let's read a bit more. Meanwhile, the US border is completely wide open. Illegal immigrants are flooding into the country at record levels. And they told us walls don't work, say the Gateway Pundit. The obvious message to take out of this, but worth saying. And then the Gateway Pundit says, these people are nothing but elitist hypocrites, which I'd have to agree with. Capstasher says, they're going to pull some shit, something so bad it'll make people want to attack the White House. Now, that is a possibility. But more mundane possibilities are also present. And Bright is right that he's protecting what matters to him. Deng says, we're winning, boys, they're afraid. Not sure you can make that assertion. See, I think Capstasher's theory is more likely than that. This is something that will take a long time, and I think we'll know when it's coming to its close, not because we are resplendent in our victory, but because we have nothing and neither does everyone else. Nothing else but rebellion. Right, next. I guess next thing. All right, what's that? Yeah, so this. I think we'll do this story and then we'll move on to a different stream segment. I'm not sure how important this is, but it might be quite important. Let's have a look. Quote, "We failed. Danish newspaper apologizes for publishing official COVID narratives without questioning them." In August, Germany's top newspaper, Bild, apologized for the outlet's fear-driven COVID coverage, with special message to children who were told that they were going to murder their grandma. Something that apparently Bild said earlier. Now a newspaper in Denmark has publicly apologized for reporting government narratives surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic without questioning them. Well, the press have realized that they are the press. Good to know. "We failed," quote unquote, reads the article's headline from tabloid Extra Bladet, which goes on to admit that for almost 2 years, we, the press and the population, have been almost hypnotically preoccupied with the authorities' daily coronavirus figures. Yeah, pretty much. "We have stared at the oscillations of the number pendulum when it came to infected, hospitalized, and died with corona, and we have been given the significance of the pendulum's smallest movements laid out by experts, politicians, and authorities who have constantly warned us about the dormant corona monster under our beds, a monster just waiting for us to all fall asleep so we can strike in the gloom of darkness and night. The constant mental alertness has worn out tremendously on all of us. That is why we, the press, must also take stock of our own efforts, and we have failed. We have not been vigilant enough at the garden gate when the authorities were required to answer what it actually meant that people are hospitalized with corona and not because of corona. Because it makes a difference, a big difference. Exactly. The official hospitalization numbers have been shown to be 27% higher than the actual figure for how many there are in the hospital, simply because they have corona. We only know that now. So no, I and others have known facts like that, possibly that specifically, for a long time. The press coming onto it now is good that it's happening at all, and don't be hard on anyone that is realizing the truth now, even though they're late. But make the point, like, yeah, I was saying this about a year ago, more than that even. Of course, they go on. It is first and foremost the authorities who are responsible for informing the population correctly, accurately, and honestly. The figures for how many are sick and died of corona should, for obvious reasons, have been published long ago, so we got the clearest picture of the monster under the bed. In all, the messages of the authorities and politicians to the people in this historic crisis leave much to be desired, and therefore they lie as they have ridden parts... They lie as they have ridden when parts of the population lose confidence in them. Not sure what that means. Another example, the vaccines are consistently referred to as our super weapon, and our hospitals are called super hospitals. Nevertheless, these super hospitals are apparently maximally pressured, even though almost the entire population is armed with a super weapon. Even children have been vaccinated on a huge scale, which has not been done in our neighboring countries. And is not useful either. In other words, they say, there is something here that does not deserve the term super, whether it's the vaccines, the hospital, or a mixture of it all. Is every man's bid, but at least the authorities' communication to the population in no way deserves the term super. On the contrary. The Zero Hedge continues, will other news outlets have the journalistic integrity to follow suit? Perhaps CNN's ratings would be down 90% from last... It wouldn't be down 90% from last year in the key 25 to 54 demographic if they simply owned up to their complicity in breathlessly spewing government propaganda. CNN, I suggest, are actually just evil. So yeah, there's a Danish tabloid, which is not, a huge development, but this could become much bigger. I mean, I doubt that the main journalistic establishment, if you can even call it that, are going to start following suit, because most of them are bought and paid for, I imagine. I don't think any of the US ones are, but as I mentioned earlier, more and more I suspect that this whole international fear narrative about COVID is coming almost entirely from purveyors in the US, not because it's the US, just because that's the center of power, not to blame Americans just because that's their world hegemon. That's where it's coming from a few evil people propagating it deliberately, even though they know it's untrue or hurtful to people to believe, via paying for media establishment. And everyone else is just going along with it because that's what everyone's saying. And, it's not easy to figure out what's wrong with the data either. But there is a lot wrong with the data. Lying with statistics is definitely possible. Is fairly common, actually. And the people that are doing it know how to do it. Yeah. Steve, the writer, is it's a pen name used by the Zero Hedge site. I think every article on Zero Hedge is by quote-unquote Tyler Durden. Either way. That's actually, I lied earlier. There aren't merely 2 white pill stories. There are 3. CNN loses 90% of 25 to 54 demographic. I'll read exactly the article title. Viewership at scandal-plagued CNN plummets by as much as 90% from last year in both overall audience and in advertiser-coveted 25 to 54 demographic. There must be something more to this, because it's not a simple matter of 90% of their viewership is gone, is it? It can't be. CNN saw a sharp decline in viewership in the first week of 2022, with a nearly 90% drop both overall and in the critical demographic coveted by advertisers. The network averaged just 548,000 viewers during the week of January 3rd, as a precipitous drop to the nearly 2.7 million viewers from the same week in 2021. Right. Okay, so that's just still fucking huge. I mean, that is still basically 90% of your viewers are gone. That is, within a year, 90% in the same month, the same week. I wonder if there's some other reason for that, but that's huge. Like that's the kind of thing where there must be another factor. There must be another reading of the stats here. Airports stopped playing them, says Chilgon. That's interesting. CNN in the last year has been plagued by high-profile scandals, most notably the firing of its top-rated prime-time star, Chris Comer. That would have, like, at most a 10%. I would expect to see, like, a 10% change. I don't think it's 90 is something else. 90 was almost certainly technical, like what Chilgon is saying. Like, if every airport in the country was playing them, and then suddenly they all stopped for some reason, like some licensing bullshit where none of them played them anymore, that's the kind of thing that maybe that would happen with. But even then, 90%? Only 10% of their viewers are not just airport people? I don't know. That would be surprising. To be fair, though, they earn their money from perception. From the perception that advertisers can reach the people by advertising on their platform, essentially. If this news becomes well known among advertisers, then they won't have that money anymore. And maybe they don't have a lot anyway, because advertisers probably do know this. The only reason they have any money, the way they have to stay afloat is by taking investments from people that have an agenda. Because who would invest in a media company that is fucking falling into obsolescence, that is becoming more and more useless every year? Someone that wanted to use the little bit of influence and authority that media company is perceived as having to direct public opinion. As long as they can. That's what they're doing. Critics have slammed network boss Jeff Zucker over the declining ratings, which began in 2021, with some accusing him of protecting perverts and pedophiles. This, as much as, yeah, that's bad, I don't think this has anything to do with that. This is either a technicality, a mistake, or some other corporate thing. But either way, even if we take, like, more conventional reasons for this, the scandals of the pedophilia and that kind of thing, that's probably only a small portion of the reason. If there is any more conventional reason for this, more sort of public opinion-based reason, it's probably because they're such hateful liars. But it would be naive to hold out for that being the main reason. Scandal-scarred CNN has seen its viewership nosedive by a staggering 90% both overall and in the critical demographic covered by advertisers. The once proud leader in cable news averaged just 548,000 viewers during a week of January 3rd, a precipitous drop from the nearly 2.7 million viewers from the same week in 2021, according to the most recent ratings. So here's the thing, right? If other leftist news corporations have experienced a similar drop, then it is our narrative, pretty much. It has to be. It has to be that people are just sick of these liars. However, if it's just CNN, it probably isn't that. If others have a small, like noticeable but much smaller drop, then it could still be. But if it's just CNN, then no, it's something else. Those numbers were supercharged by the left-leaning network's coverage of the January 6th Capitol riot, which resulted in CNN having its most watched day since Ted Turner launched the news outlet in 1980. I guess that could be part of it, that they're just comparing to a week that had a lot of views. In which case, this whole thing is bullshit. Maybe this is the Daily Mail trying to sabotage CNN's advertising potential by reporting on it as if it's real, but actually manipulating the statistics. What about the second week of January? We're in the second week, or arguably the third week now. What about the second week? What's the difference there? Oh, only 5%. Oh, well, then there's no fucking story, is there? There we go, lying with statistics. If that really is what it is, then that could be it. Even here, the Daily Mail is calling it an insurrection. It was a fucking romp. There was no insurrection. It wasn't even quelled. Like, if it was an insurrection, why didn't it succeed? They didn't stop them. It wasn't an insurrection that was halted. They just went in there, pissed about. There were some isolated areas of violence in which someone got shot for no good reason, and then most of them just left. In the fucking velvet ropes. How is that an insurrection? Some politicians got scared. None of the big names were there, though. Pelosi wasn't there. That's interesting, isn't it? It could be a coincidence, but it could also not be. Viewers chose right-wing rival Fox as it topped ratings for coverage of the event, apparently. CNN also saw an 86% decline in the much desirable 25 to 54 demographic, with a paltry 113,000 tuned in last week compared to 822,000 CNN averaged a year ago. It could be as simple as there just wasn't any stories that week. The network, which was swallowed up by AT&T in its merger with Warner Media last year, has been plagued by high-profile scandals, most notably the firing of its top-rated prime-time star Chris Cuomo, after the anchor was found to be helping his sex-pest brother Andrew try to beat harassment allegations, which led to the resignation of the New York governor. So here is comparisons for... This is good. This is different networks. So, year over year, as of Jan 3rd, total daytime, total viewers, and then, Jan 3rd, 2022, Jan 4th, 2021. Right, so they've all dropped. As I said earlier, if they've all dropped, that kind of suggests our narrative that people are just getting sick of the liars is true. And they have all dropped, all of them. So it might not just be the January 6th thing. But again, this is the first week of the year. It's possible that they all saw a massive boost in numbers for covering that, even Fox News. But yeah, that is notable, though, isn't it? That all of them have seen a drop. Like MSNBC, for example, 2.28 million in 2021, and then in 2022, 746,000. That's not quite a 90% drop, but it's not far off. Like maybe like a 70% drop. Still huge. And Fox News even lost out. Fox News is just over half. So it's like a 45% drop for Fox News. I think I'm reading this correctly. Monday to Sunday, total daytime viewers. That's 2021, that's 2022. Yeah. So the fact, unfortunately, if we had second week data, it would be much more useful. But I'd be surprised if this could be accounted for purely by the January 6th event. Capsash says more people were at home due to COVID last year. That is another truth factor. Again, it would be hard to say for this that the factor of people getting sick of the press, the corporate press, and their bullshit isn't in there. But it probably isn't the main factor. Still, this is encouraging. Whatever the reason, if they are declining in viewership, which they probably are in general, even if this is a misrepresentation, then that's good. As long as they're on that trend, we will eventually get out of this, though it may take a long time. All right. Let's not. They talk here about the sexual allegation stuff, which probably isn't the real reason. Let's go on to the next thing. Let's do this as the last story. There's another sort of a white pill, actually, but it could be something else. So from WND.com, quote, "It's over, people. WHO warns against vaccine mandates and repeated booster shots." WHO is the World Health Organization, which near the beginning was very much supporting exactly what you'd expect China to be saying, because it's not a coincidence. The World Health Organization said in a statement that a vaccination strategy based on repeated booster doses of the original COVID-19 vaccines is unlikely to be appropriate or sustainable. Recognizing the inability of the shots to stop the spread, the UN Health Agency said future vaccines against COVID-19 must be more effective in protection against infection, thus lowering community transmissions. Quote, "It's over, people," was the response from Alex Berenson, a former New York Times reporter who has devoted his independent reporting to the pandemic, publishing several books on the subject. Quote, "Aside from a few unlucky Israelis, no one is going to receive a fourth dose of the original vaccine. Everyone with eyes can see it doesn't work against Omicron," he wrote on his Substack page. Separately on Wednesday, the WHO said vaccination status should not be used to disqualify people from traveling internationally, advising governments to implement vaccine mandates only as a last resort. And this is the WHO saying this. At the beginning of the WHO were among the more extreme segments, talking from the perspective of our opponent. Now, they are making soft arguments that are on our side. Like, maybe slow down a little bit on the dystopianism. You know, they're just about on our side with some of these things. Maybe there is more to it. I mean, they're saying don't do it because they aren't effective enough. Probably they're saying make better ones. And maybe this is a setup for like, you can't do this anymore. This is not good enough. And then the other side, as part of this pantomime, says, oh, you're right. Here, we've made a much better one, and that's the depopulator. But that is, of course, very speculative. Separately on Wednesday, I read the bit. On Tuesday, the European Union's top health agency warned that getting boosted every 4 months could harm the immune system's ability to fight off the disease. Yeah, that's probably what they want. The people that invented the vaccination invented something that looks like it works, but actually over the long term makes it more likely for the virus to stay around so as to guarantee their profits forever from government as a money laundering scheme. So the money comes from the people into the government, into the pharmaceutical corporations, which several members of the government have invested in, so they get the money themselves. It's just a way of funneling money from the people into government agents of the government and corporate leaders. It's just a massive pile of money and a money laundering scheme to support that pile of money being distributed to the people they want it. They want it to be distributed to. That seems to be the narrative of this pandemic at this time. Whether the pandemic itself was part of the plan, I don't know, but they certainly seem to get their shit together with a consistent narrative quickly, didn't they? Can't help but think that China releasing it was part of the plan as well, which wouldn't be surprising at all. That's exactly the kind of thing China would do. It was probably quite beneficial to China. They don't give a fuck about the health of their people, but they do give a fuck about the ability to subvert, tyrannize, weaken the US. And look how successful it was in weakening the US. The coronavirus was a large part of the reason, a very large part of the reason, why they got away with rigging the election, because plenty of their arguments relied on the idea of no in person. And the mail-in votes were how they rigged it. Mostly. Not entirely, but mostly. So this is all exactly within the motives that we understand. China would want to release it. They would want to cover it up. The Democrats would want to act initially like it's not a problem to make sure it spreads around. Then they would want to flip around exactly as Trump is saying, it's not that bad anymore. They are saying, it's really fucking bad. Everyone needs to get vaccinated. And then they get 70% of they get the executive. They cheat to do so. They get 70% of the American public vaccinated. Massive pile of money. Pelosi's stock portfolio vastly inflates, etc., etc. The only possibly reassuring thing is that if the motivation is big pile of money, then it probably isn't. It's probably going to end at some point. Like the tyranny as a result is probably going to end, and they're just going to continue sucking on the teat as long as they can. The only problem is that another possible motive for this is just more government control. There's we read on stream a while ago the idea that if you have control of healthcare from a tyrant's point of view, you have control of the people. Now the government in the US, at least, and in other places, have much more control over healthcare than they did before. Narrative as well as legislative. So yes, on the one hand, if it is pile of money, then we don't have to assume a long-term dystopian tyrannical motive, but we can still assume that even if it is also about big pile of money. And frankly, if the narrative I've just laid out is true, god damn, that is a fucking genius grift. It's also, of course, possible that it all happened naturally, but it just seems rather unlikely. It seems like a lot of this would have to be set up and planned. It's also possible it wasn't. All right, chat. I think we will do a final content vote. I remind you that if you enjoy the show and you would like to see it continue, then the only way it can continue is by your generous contributions, which you can send in via tip.oozloo.net. Currently, there is a ×2 multiplier. If you contribute right now, that will go up to ×3, because that happens immediately after contributions. Carl Childers is currently £104. I wonder if we can knock him off by the end of the stream. Tell you what, chat, if we can knock him off by the end of the stream, what would be a good reward? What's something fun that we could do at the end of the stream? What do you guys reckon? And I will switch back over here, read chat for a while, and we'll do another content vote. So we've done memes and news. So now it's kind of up to you guys. What do you want to do? If you want to do indie games, I could do that. I don't have any ready, but I can get some pretty quickly. We'll have a little read through, 5-10 minutes to find some. If you vote for Tomboys, as you currently are, I don't know what we'll do, but I'm sure we can find something. And what else? Well, what else is there? I suppose I doubt that anyone's going to vote for this. But if you wanted to, I could probably boot up Natron and show you what I'm doing with the Wizards of Space intro. There's not much done on it yet, but I can give you sort of a tour of the software. That's quite techy. Most of you won't be interested, but I'm just coming up with ideas here. We could also possibly get some guests on. Okay, so how about this, right? Here's an idea. If there is a new stream boss before the end of the stream, I will get no less than 5 guests on from the live channel. No less than 5 will come on. That's a big stream party for the end of the stream. As I remind you, if you want to knock off Carl Childers from his spot, if you send in the contribution now, it will set the multiplier up to ×3, which means that it will only take about 60, 70 in total to knock him off. That's up to you guys if you want to do that. We'll have a big party in the guests room if Carl Childers is knocked off today. Chilgon said, look what it cost them to get here. They had to go mask off, and that will cost them the most in the long term. Possibly, yeah. The mask is at least somewhat off. Bright says, can we make Zane a moderator if we knock Carl Childers off the boss spot? He's not here, sadly, so it's not going to be as fun to bully him about that. But it's not a bad idea. Yes, as Achilles said, he already is one. We could collectively humiliate and kick Ebb, says Achilles. That's a possibility. We watch your funny VTuber, says Capstasher. I don't think I would just put on a VTuber, because like any content I put on, I should be commentating on. Fair use. Even if YouTube won't respect the law or the principle of fair use, I'll still respect the principle, i.e. the spirit of fair use. Thank you, Achilles. Achilles has done what the Cabal Monarchist Party could not, and has referred to me as His Royal Highness, or Our Royal Highness. The Cabal Monarchist Party, frankly, at this point, is a shadow of its former self. Really kind of a mockery. Sasha says we watch her as an after party. Yeah, maybe. But I'm not just going to sit here and play you Snuffy. It's kind of cringe. What I will do is sit here and play you Voyager. It's quite late already, but I did say that I might do that. So it's only 45 minutes. I think after the show, press 1 if you would like to give this a go. It's a Star Trek episode with a thank you, Clever Dog, with a relevant a story that is somewhat relevant to the modern day issues we're dealing with. It's only 45 minutes. It's a very good Voyager episode. As I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of build up and then big payoff at the end. It's a good Janeway episode too. Clever Duck says MSP remains supreme. Well, I guess we'll see. Yeah. Daka says, scientists, we expect severe illness and death from you on a massive scale. Omicron. Best I can do is a runny nose and a headache. Good. Ooh, A Bit Picky has contributed and says, a little contribution to shake the pillar Carl stands, upon which Carl stands, I assume. Thank you. A bit picky. Appreciate that. That will take him down when it appears, which it should have appeared by now. Why isn't it appearing? I went into the code and I found a reason why it might not have been fetching all of the contribution messages, and I thought I had fixed it. We'll give it a minute to appear, but if it doesn't, I will count that as having been sent. That would have taken Carl down to 43 required to remove him. So if anyone wants to send 43, that'll be him off, and we'll have a party in the guest room. But otherwise, I'll have a look at the content vote and see what people have chosen so far. Where is my message? There it is. So currently, it's 6 for tomboys, 5 for gaming, 2 for a computer screen, which I assume means I show you my cool tech, the graphics and stuff. 2 for Boss Pepe, don't know what that would be. 4 for Glowy, which I don't see Isaiah or ours or Doc in chat, so that one's difficult. And then 1 for VTubers. Yeah, that contribution message is not appearing. That's a big problem. I thought I went in and found something that could have been causing that problem, and I had changed it, but it didn't appear. It leads me to believe that maybe the problem is actually on Stream Elements API. It's actually not presenting it to me. But your contribution is being counted a bit picky, and I will consider that if another 43 is knocked off of Carl Childers, so if he gets down to 20, then I will consider the challenge of getting him knocked off fulfilled. Regardless, it doesn't show it. All right, so chat, it looks like the tomboy vote is going to win, but I don't know what that would actually mean. So I'm open to suggestions. What do you reckon? Because I see Bright and Verdant, 2 of the primary advocates and luminaries of the tomboy movement in Cabal, are in chat. So I wonder what exactly would that mean? Verdant says post tomboy pics. Again, it's the kind of thing where, like, just watching entertainment content, what is there to comment on? What do I actually, what's the point of showing it on stream? Tomboy vote. No, the tomboy vote did win before, but what I did last time is I just had Verdant and Bright on, and we just chatted about tomboys and showed 1 or 2 of them. I didn't think it was a very good segment. I'm sure that we could do something else with it. Maybe we could do some tomboy truth instead. We actually discussed the idea instead. I don't know what specifically we'd be discussing on that, though. I was thinking that, Pug says games are winning. Well, I never said that the vote was over, but I expected that Tomboys was going to win. Let's have a look at what the vote stands at now. Games has indeed leapt ahead, so I tell you what, we'll give it another 30 seconds. It's 6 votes for Tomboy, 7 votes for Games. 4 votes for Glowy, though I don't know what that means. Capstasher has sent in 5, says, you should show Tomboys now. Well, to be fair, that counts as a super vote. So 1 vote for Tomboys until they win or the stream ends. So currently they're tied. Tomboys at 7 with the super vote, and Gaming at 7 without 1. So we'll give it another 10 seconds, at which point it will become sudden death, if they're still tied. 6 votes plus 1 super vote for Tomboys, and 7 votes for Gaming. So 7-7. 5 seconds. And sudden death, whichever one changes. Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. You waited until sudden death, and then you put your vote on. Well, fair enough. Well, Verdant, it was a good topic. But as I've mentioned before, democracy is not for making good decisions. It is for reflecting the will of the people. The will of the people is we like Tomboys. And frankly, if they're voting for it, then perhaps that is an indication for me that I need to make it a better section. So there you go. You can take something positive out of what seems like a negative. Something that often you have to do for nuanced issues. Wow. Bright, that's pretty wholesome. Let us get rid of those. Start a new set of memes. Very wholesome. Femoid engagement. Yes, I do care. Yes, I asked. You might be a little cringe, but I like that about you. A femoid that we can all support. The thing is, right, idealizing women who have sort of male personality, male interests in the ways that are good is good, right? There is positives to that. It encourages women to be more like that, which is good. I mean, it's a better archetype. And they do exist. They are rare, but they do exist. But it's also, I feel like there is an element of sort of missing the point of women in the first place. They are supposed to be antagonistic to men, to some extent. They are supposed to be a bit of both. They're supposed to be comforting when times are rough, but also antagonistic, especially when times are good. Because the point of women is that they push men to do things they wouldn't otherwise do that are useful for building up infrastructure of all different kinds, not just physical. And so having like that is what feminine women do. Feminine women in modern society do take it too far, I think. But we shouldn't take it too far the other direction, really. I don't mind a tomboy who does push in some of the same directions that feminine women might. I just don't like the hyper-feminine obnoxiousness that a lot of women have these days. And I do like the more sort of practical, down-to-earth, energetic, chaotic, but still, as I said, like practical and down-to-earth, but also still chaotic and energetic attitude that most the tomboys I like have anyway. I have been thinking, like, if we were to further subclassify tomboys, I think it would become clear that there is one major subcategory that I like, and the others I like more than other archetypes, but I'm more indifferent to. And if we were to subclassify in such a way as we could simply liken them, then let me begin by positing Snuffy as a good publicly accessible example of the kind of tomboy archetype that I like, and to say that for those of you that think, yeah, she's all right, but I prefer this one, and I think that's a tomboy as well, then that is your preferred archetype. But either way, we are all united in that appreciation of the supercategory, even the subcategory differs. And Bright has linked this meme that came up recently, and yes, I have seen it, and yes, I have seen it as well. Right, here's the meme. Don't think that I'm putting this up without realizing what I've done. Here's a childhood friend GF. It's one of these nice wholesome images with a bunch of nice wholesome notions around it to emblemize the childhood friend GF, such as, can I tell you something? I kind of had a crush on you growing up. Yeah, I remember that, lol. Sits between your legs. You like when I do that? Be gentle, it's my first time, etc., etc. And the Holocaust never happened. Down there in the bottom left, hidden behind her leg. This is one of those where it's like they're trying to get someone who is just after wholesome posting to spread the idea that the Holocaust never happened, which it's a fun meme. But regardless the Holocaust aspect of this, the rest of it, they've done a good job making it wholesome, haven't they? Verdant says, I have some doubts on Snuffy being tomboy with her propensity to be a bitchy woman. I haven't really seen that, actually. I've always seen her be pretty positive. Maybe in the Nux doxing stuff, she did voice her opinion on that. But on stream, she's always very positive. Maybe she would be, but a tomboy doesn't have to never be bitchy. It should be the rarer way. I mean, to be honest, a woman that's as into gaming so much that they stream with games as a career probably is a lot less of the bad things we dislike about the feminine archetypes than others. But they can still have some. Like I've said, it's a hybrid, but the hybrid can involve some negative traits as well. It's just mostly positive traits. I mean, when a tomboy is good, they are a good hybrid, so good masculine traits, good feminine traits. But you can also have someone that's a tomboy who doesn't have all good traits. And that may be something that Snuffy has or that others have. It's not an all or nothing thing. Nothing is, really. Yeah, so here's the advocacy from Evil Duck for this segment. STFU and post tomboys. Yeah, Achilles says, be a tomboy enjoyer, not a fan. That's probably a good attitude. And also, there's I think in my continuing efforts to find sort of a mechanistic evolutionary answer to why promiscuousness is bad, I've never felt fully satisfied with the explanations given, but I think I am getting to one now. What I'm currently working through is it's about standards. The more promiscuous someone is, this is probably more so for women, but also somewhat for men as well, the higher their standards get, the more they expect because the more they've experienced. And so the less likely it is for them to find a partner. Now, the more likely it is that if they do find a partner, that partner will be higher quality, at least by their standards. But then those standards might simply be sex or dick size or something irrelevant to propagation of the species or to society being good. So if they're going to have high standards, they should still, if they're going to be promiscuous and thus end up with high standards, they should still be bonking people for good reasons. That would be, in today's society, probably the minority, but maybe that's always been the case. Maybe it's always been the minority. But the thing is that contraception is really changing that picture, because if you were promiscuous in the past, you would end up being with someone who you didn't get to choose as well, someone who you chose when you were young, when you were stupider, maybe somewhat more on a whim, and you would probably have children with them as the first person you were with, or near the first person anyway. But with contraception, you can go through almost as many as you want, and with also abortion as well, and your standards just keep getting higher for, in most cases, things that are not relevant to propagation of the species, for purely sexual things, for example. Your standards keep getting higher until the point that your standards are so high, but you still have such a need for sex that you're going to just keep cycling through random people, which is useless for civilization. It's fun, but useless for civilization. And so it's probably the closest to a mechanistic argument for why you shouldn't be promiscuous that I've come up with. As I said, it probably applies more so to women, but probably also to men as well. What do you guys reckon? Am I wrong on that? Is there some other argument that's relevant there? Feronius says there's probably at least two types of tomboys: rough and tumble, sporty one, and perhaps the more analytical one that focuses on harder sciences and maybe investigatory things, like a Japanese name. Now, it's possible, Feronius, that you are conflating the Aspie girl, the autist girl, with tomboys, and there is some crossover, and tomboys can have autism, and autistic girls can be tomboys, but I think they're not quite the same. For me, at least, tomboy females are almost exclusively have ADHD, and that is the condition that emblemizes them. No example I have found of a tomboy does not seem to have common traits of ADHD as well. All VTubers are forgetful, have bad memory. I don't know of any that doesn't, or at least they exhibit one or two definite ADHD symptoms. Whether there's not an official diagnosis, but I'm as close as I can get for an official diagnosis. So that's the best you're going to get. The autist girl is different. They sometimes do have more male tastes, but it's maybe we could say that the tomboy category contains both of those groups, the ADHD girl and the autist girl. And probably not all that have those conditions are tomboys either. It's just a lot of, all that are tomboys have those conditions, but not all that have those conditions are tomboys. So maybe we can say that the autist falls into the category of tomboys as well. But I will try to make the clear distinction that while it's not a bad archetype, it's not really what I'm into. And I was with one for a while, and let me assure you that it is not a good idea to idealize the autist girlfriend unless you yourself are very socially inept. There are problems inherent with that. They are still women. Even the best of tomboys are still women. You still expect them to have some of the issues that come along with that. There was frequent shit testing, even though they knew what shit testing was and insisted they weren't doing it. So I think it was just pure instinct. So, Vil, which of those two categories do you think you are? Do you think, you say that you're a tomboy. If we allow for those two categories to exist and to both be called tomboy, do you think that you would fall more so in the autistic or more so in the ADHD category? And there's also, with the ADHD, there's two different variants of that. There's the hyperactive and the inattentive. Now, current thinking on it is that all of them are inattentive and most of them are hyperactive while they're young and grow out of it when they're older. But you could also possibly subcategorize again with the ADHD tomboy down to the energetic and the disaffected, the inattentive, essentially. And I can't think of a good example of the latter category. Maybe Ina counts as that. Maybe also Emilia to some extent, but then Kiara and somewhat Gura are the more energetic type, and Snuffy definitely very energetic type. So we're continuing to post tomboy images as they appear in chat. I don't think that's supposed to be Crony, but it looks kind of a bit like Crony. And then this is Redhead. Redheads have a pretty good tendency to be tomboys, probably more than the average. Possibly why the establishment hates them so much, the Globo Homo. However, I wonder if there might be a genetic answer for that. I won't go into it because I'm certainly not an expert, but I wonder if there is a genetic correlation there between redheads and ADHD. I wonder if ADHD is a condition that appears much more in European originated societies, as do redheads. And maybe that there is a lot of, and maybe that's why people say redheads are great in bed, because they tend to have ADHD of the hyperactive variety. That those genes tend to correlate with each other. It's the kind of thing that, like, if I had a massive lab, I probably would study. If I was very wealthy, this is the kind of thing that I would actually run a study on, but because I don't, I'm just have to leave it with speculation for now, and no one else is going to study it. Let's face it. I don't know. Any of you have a massive lab and a lot of money to study the genetics of tomboys and redheads? The comparative genetics? Chase is saying, I'm being too autistic. Goodness me. Well, Chase, one of the autistic symptoms I have maintained, though I have dropped lots of them over the years, just as a result of growing up. One of the ones that I have retained is analytical sort of concept bashing. When I arrange things into a sort of web of meaning, a map of meaning, as Peterson would put it. I think we're talking about the same thing. And I'm like, the reason that anyone watches me is in large part due to the fact that I do that. If for no other reason than that is not really that conventional. I'm not trying to say I'm unique, but I'm one of the people that does it the most I've ever seen. There are other people that somewhat use that method, but I almost only use that method. I just rely on very high standards for finding the truth and just rigorous, constant, personal, internal working through concepts and trying to find connections. That's my method for truth. And it seems to be working pretty well. The thing is, as long as I am cautious and rigorous, it's fine. I don't have to read other philosophers. I don't have to read even scientific papers. Though, of course, extra data helps. As long as I'm rigorous, I never make an assertion that I don't know fits the map of concepts. And that's almost always what's true, because the map of concepts is founded all the way up on rigor. As long as I maintain the standards, it'll work fine. And occasionally, the reason I read news partly is to readjust where needed. If I've made a mistake on the concept map, I'm very happy to adapt and change it. Adaptivity, also an ADHD thing. Press 1 if you would visit Tomboy Outback regularly if it existed. Thought I might get some ones for that. It's also a good test of the stream latency, because I know that you would have immediately pressed 1 as soon as I said it. 1 if Australia was real. Jade, what do you think of that? Jade says, I just like your voice. Well, I'll take that as an insult. Thanks, Jade. And then Jade says, hey, no. What was that about? 1, I don't even like dining out, says Arbla. Yeah, me neither, but I would head over. That'd be pretty good. I wonder how they'd be. Oh, Isaiah Izzy, he has a different profile picture. That's why I didn't notice him earlier. I wonder how well they would be able to maintain the policy of tomboy outbite. They'd have to figure out a tomboy taxonomy pretty quickly. That's probably what we should do is a tomboy taxonomy, because I've kind of laid it out there. Like, the autistic and the ADHD can both be counted as tomboy. I'm more reluctant to say that the autistic girl counts. I think probably most tomboys in this sort of prime sense of the idea of a tomboy has a bit of ADHD and a bit of autism. Probably more ADHD than autism. I think that's where the balance is. It's like 60-40 or 70-30 ADHD autism is what's required for a tomboy. Jade says, redhead out back, no you. You're only going to make me draw tomboy cabal more. Do it. You really, okay, well then, what must I do to encourage this? Because this is something worth encouraging. So I'm about to show you guys something that might break everything, but Jade, just so you know, you're not in Cabal, so you probably wouldn't have seen this, but this, what I'm about to show you, is the display I use for when I stream with OBS, media sharing into Cabal, right? That's what I use internally. Some of your artwork, Jade. So just so you know, your artwork is not unappreciated. It's also credited. So everyone that sees that soundbite screen sees that it's yours, learns that you exist. So it's not unappreciated. Wendelin, Y11, and Dr. Suspicious, says Jade. Yeah, I would love to see a parody of Cabal like that. That'd be funny. Yeah, let's go ahead and show this. The conflict between femboys and tomboys rages on. Only one answer being appropriate. The thing is, like, it's so bloody obvious. So what do we like about women? Biology, mostly. Some aspects of their personality, but not that many. It's mostly biology. I'm being a bit unfair. What's the thing about women that you can't really find in anyone else? The biology. What's the thing about men that you can't really find in anything else? The personality, the pragmatic, down-to-earth attitude. Okay, so what is a tomboy? Oh, it's those two things combined. The things that are the most unique and rarefied and specialized to each gender, the things that people are interested in each gender, combined together. Okay, nice. What's a femboy? The opposite thing. The thing that is worse and common and boring and useless in each gender, combined together. Why? And they have a penis. It's like, how could you be more gay and retarded as to like femboys? I've never got it. But I tolerate them. Right, says best monster girl / tomboy combination in your opinion. I've never been very big on like theming after animals. There's plenty of variation in humans already. Maybe if I was told you must theme on an animal, I'd be like, okay, cult of this animal, or like doctrine of this animal, not actually this animal. Like Gura, I'm sorry to break it to you, is a shark girl, like a shark-themed human female child. Not actually a shark. I know it's heresy, I know, but my point is, I don't see the point of monster girling girls. I don't really have an answer. I know, Jade. I know it's just a test render, but it's still very good, and I like it. It looks like a photo. It's so good of the Sovereign. But if you look very closely, you can sort of see that it's sort of sketchy. It's sort of supposed to be. It's obviously very good, but you can see the lines. They're not pristine lines like a photograph. So very, very good artwork, frankly. Do cat girls count as monsters? I think they probably would be close enough, yeah, Jade. I mean, cats are monstrous anyway. Arblar says, femboys are a facsimile of tomboys with a more average feminine aesthetic, which explains their popularity somewhat. No, it's just gay people. It might not be, yes, there might be some more depth to it than that, but the surface analysis is, yeah, it's just gay people. And you really can't say that with tomboys. If you were homosex, you would just and you wanted and you were also into a male personality, why would you not just go for a male? They're way more common, and they have penis, which if you're gay, you'd be into. Tomboys, on the other hand, do not have penis. They do have a male personality, or not exclusively, but more so than other women. A tomboy is simply the erudite choice for a man who is strong enough not to need a woman to tell him everything he must do by pure antagonism. Which, I'm not saying is wrong. It is useful for our species, but it's also very fucking annoying. Verdant says, because most women are monsters. That's true. They don't need to be any more monstrous. Chilgon, I have actually done my own maths on whether fucking a trap is gay, and in almost all cases, yes. Or being, or liking. In most cases, yes, in all. So, anything else? Verdant says, Subaru is a duck girl. I'm not sure why you brought that up, like there was a counter-argument, but yeah. I mean, she's not intended to be by her own intentions, but she has, I think, sort of adopted that theme now. So yeah, she's not a duck, but she is a girl who has become themed on a duck because of pressure from without. Whereas Gura comes to be like an Atlantean, not an actual shark, and yet she says that she's a shark, and it's like she is a avatar of a shark in human form, but without really any of the personality of a shark either, just the theming. Like, or sometimes once or twice she'll adopt some sensibility or personality or activity or behavior of one might think is common for sharks, but not very often. The theming is mostly what it's about. So, hate to say it, but it's more of a marketing thing than anything else. Bright says, "Is a woman fucking a trap gay?" Not sure why it would be. I mean, I think we could do separate maths on that. There would be some circumstances in which it probably would be. As I said, like the answer that I got for the traps thing was not a yes or no. It was conditional. I actually did the logic properly. I worked through and found in these conditions, yes, in these conditions, no. In most conditions, it was yes. With a woman, there would just be less yes conditions, I think. But she's clearly hydrodynamic. That's true. That's true. A lot of humans are too, though. Science is no. That's not. That's Chilgon. That is scientism, my friend. That is some scientism right there. Is a male to female fucking a female to male gay? Probably. Yeah. The hoodie is very hydrodynamic. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think that would be a little inverse. If you put it up, though, maybe. Veronia says the closest shark-like thing about Gura is her odd propensity to seemingly gravitate towards feet. Actual sharks apparently mistake swimming people for huge fish, and that may be part of the reason why shark attacks happen. I could accept that. Gura talking about feet is the kind of thing where, like, every time she brings it up, including at the very beginning, I want to believe, and at the beginning I did believe, but more and more so it's become I want to believe that she's just doing it in mirror of the audience bringing it up. And like, eventually it becomes a self-perpetuating thing where because she brought it up the first time, the audience brings it up and then she brings it up because they did, etc., back and forth. But more and more over time, it seemed like she is bringing it up out of nowhere. Hate to say it, chat, but I think Gura might actually be a foot fetishist. Right. I think we'll wrap up here. I was already pretty tired when I started. I managed to last for 3 hours. Thank you very much for the contributions. We will do the big stream party, possibly when Carl Childers is knocked off, whenever that happens. But remind me if I forget next time. If you want to do the big stream party, remind me next time, and I might set up again, like when he's knocked off. We'll have no less than 5 people from the audience in to chat together. the English on that is terrible, right? But so is that Mordred? Because I think at some point I should watch the anime that's from. Because whenever I see the character, I don't really like the aesthetic, but I can respect you guys liking it and saying that she's a tomboy. And if she's has an English accent, then maybe I like that more. There are some contexts in which I prefer when they're English, and some contexts in which I prefer that they're not. So I'm not sure how that would go. But I have been disappointed with the sort of dearth of English, British, either way, VTubers. There was one I found, and the moment she got a bunch of new audience members, including me, she started spouting communist shit to drive away people that actually had a fucking brain. Literally. It was terrible. It was atrocious. And that's the only one I've ever found. Actually, there was one other, but there was one actually that did like really good impressions, about 20 or 30 different VTubers, and I tried to promote that, but she doesn't stream or do videos regularly. Of course, finding a British one is not the end of the game. I also have to find one that's good that I actually want to watch. And so for now, I'm relying on the more populous Yankoids, who also seem to be just generally more drawn towards the interest. Like, there's about 5 to 6 times the number of people in the US that there are in the UK. But there seems to be like 50 times as many VTubers in the US as there are in the UK, which I suppose is to the US's credit. Well, I think all my favorites are from the US. Some of them have other nationalities as well. I think so, Verdon. Yeah, I can't remember her name. Bright says, girls in armor, yay or nay? I would have to say mostly a yay. But there is the risk, of course, that someone who is decked out like this might not be doing it because they have a responsible, firm grasp of the power they wield, especially if they're a woman. In which case they might be violent at the wrong times. If they are prone to violence at the right times, then if they are not responsible with that, then they may also be prone to violence at the wrong times. Verdant is into knight armor, but not power armor. It's interesting. I wonder why. Generally, I would prefer without, but I'm pro with as well. Nothing against it. Not strictly related, but Skyrim fans, look how hot my character is. No, my character is hotter. Oblivion fans, haha, my character is so fucking ugly. Lol, same. And then Amelia Boson can be there as well. The Oblivion character creator is a moment in history, chat. It is a reference to look back upon and say, that is the prototypical character creation system. It may not be the only example, but it's a very good one, because yeah, you can do quite a lot of customization, but they had no bounds in place to make sure they actually looked like reasonable human beings, which I kind of like, actually. You can make some really, really ugly people in the Oblivion character creator. And this certainly is a pattern I've noticed. Now people are posting Sisters of Battle, I think that's what they're called. Which, they all look like feminists, the Sisters of Battle, for some reason. There's very few of them that actually look like cute tomboys. And even when they do, like, I don't particularly want my cute tomboy to be violent. I don't particularly want her to be leading battles. The Noticer, what's this one? Physically incapable of not pointing out every pattern he sees. I'm noticing. Everything is a data point to him. Extremely aesthetic, high-perched eyebrow. Sifts replies for more shit to notice. It's weird because one eye larger than the other to notice things better. Funny thing is, beard worn through from constant chin rubbing. Prone to schizophrenia. Noticed you're gay just from reading your posts. Well, you've successfully categorized me. Well done. You appear to have noticed me. But I'm not schizophrenic, as far as I know. I'm not particularly prone to thinking everything is connected, but the force of the evidence available makes it difficult to avoid these days, and I hate having to do it. But I can't help but notice the connections I see with various people, the conspiratorial connections even, which I'm not prone to by default. It seems that someone is atting me in chat, but I'm not paying attention to it. I guess I didn't notice. More tomboy images being posted. Yes. Anyway, we're wrapping up the show now. So chat, I'm happy to do the Voyager thing, and all of you said that you're up for it. And even if only there's 23 people watching right now, even if only 15 of you stick around, that's still good enough. I'll put the Voyager episode on. Hop into to stage 1 when we're done here, and that'll be what we'll do, and then I'll probably go to bed soon after that. So I will see you all there. Thank you for joining me. I will try to stream more soon, hopefully tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching.